Chapter 341. The next day, Song Luhua hadn't woken up yet, but she felt that it was particularly lively outside. There were waves of noises, just like the New Year's Day, screams, and particularly loud inhalations. However, her sleep quality was very good, and she felt that she was not real in her dreams. She turned over and continued to immerse herself in her dreams while hugging the quilt. Song Yuan was very disgusted with Feng Yi. "Stay away from me, you are so ugly." Feng Yi rolled his eyes at him. "Who gave you the courage to say that about me? You are not much better." After saying that, he moved away with great disgust, and his fists were a little itchy. He was just going to look for Feng Qing as usual, and looked at Feng Qing's face from a distance, which was now unbearable to look at, and looked away with disgust. But after this glance, he closed his eyes painfully, and kept repeating in his heart, hold on, he is a brother." Song Yuansu and Feng Shan played best together, and now he looked at him, and he was even more enthusiastic. "Feng Shan, let's talk." Feng Shan twitched his mouth. "It hurts the eyes." He turned around decisively, because he was afraid that if he looked at him a few more times, he would have murderous intentions. Song Yuan, good brothers are not reliable either. Of course, the one who is even more outrageous is his sister. The bewitching mirror she refined can make the strange beasts that are illuminated by it have hallucinations. The more beautiful the strange beasts are, the uglier they are, and the uglier the strange beasts are, the more beautiful they are. In addition to being confused by the strange beasts, he couldn't help but fight each other because they were irritated by the eyes. They are humans with high intelligence. Although they can see all kinds of ugly people, as long as they are not too ugly, they can suppress the anger in their hearts. Feng Shan is considered good-looking in their eyes, so naturally they will not be angry. But it was hard to say about Feng Qing and Feng Yi. They both had pretty faces, but in the eyes of those who were under the spell of the heart-confusing mirror, they were extremely ugly men with distorted facial features. It was not that he could not bear it. Somehow, after looking at such distorted facial features for a long time, he could not help but want to punch him. Feng Xi avoided it yesterday, and there was nothing unusual. But as soon as he showed up, he attracted everyone's attention. Song Yuan and others only took a look at him, took a breath of cold air, and quickly lowered their heads. "It's so damn ugly, want to beat him up." This thought came to everyone's mind unconsciously. Reason told them to be rational, and not to attack the head of their own family. That would be treason. Feng Xi at this time didn't know how ugly he was in everyone's eyes. His face was pimpled, like a toad, his facial features twisted into a ball, and he was trying to look elegant, which was particularly disgusting. Even though Song Yuan and others had closed their eyes, at this time, that ugly face had been deeply imprinted in their minds, and it always appeared in front of them. Everyone endured, and finally couldn't stand it anymore. Song Yuan shouted, "I'm sorry, Feng Xi." Then came his fierce fist. As Song Yuan attacked first, Feng Shan, Feng Yi, Feng Qing and others also joined in. Instantly, the courtyard was in chaos. Although everyone fought hard, they tried to hold back. Feng Xi also guessed the trick and just dodged without taking action. The huge noise finally startled Song Luhua. When she opened the door, the scene in the outer courtyard made her eyes shine. It's rare that Feng Xi got beaten. A group of martial arts masters fighting in a group is particularly exciting. Song Luhua couldn't help but speak up and dub the scene. Left hook, hit him on the chin. Right hook, hit him on the chin. Invincible whirlwind kick, kick him in the lower three parts. Brother, Feng Shan, can you do it? Feng Xi fought against hundreds of people alone, and there was not a single wound on his body. Song Luhua looked at his brother and others, who were exhausted and panting, and couldn't help but sigh that they were useless. Seeing that she was almost eating melon seeds on the spot, Feng Xi had no choice but to remind her, "My lady, don't watch the fun, otherwise you will be beaten later." His reminder actually attracted the attention of Song Yuan and others. Everyone looked over and said, "Wow! Ugly girl, such a big ugly girl." Song Yuan was stunned for a moment, and quickly shouted to everyone, "Don't hit her, my little sister." Song Luhua then remembered that she was really in danger of being beaten, and slammed the door. To be on the safe side, she asked Yang Ma to help sew a small black cloth bag, dug out the mouth, nose and eyes, and put it on her head. After doing all this, he opened the door again to watch the excitement. Feng Xi, is it necessary to watch this excitement? Also, his wife is so happy that he was beaten. Song Luhua said that it was a rare scene for the head of the family to be beaten. After eating a handful of melon seeds, he took out the banknotes and painted on the spot. It is worth remembering. Fight, after this fight, There will be no more fights in the future, which can be regarded as eliminating the biggest hidden danger. Song Luo nodded. The risk is controllable. On the other hand, Qin Yi and others were not much better. Not only did he have to face a group of ugly tribesmen, but he also had to be beaten up. The only bit of reason reminded him that he couldn't bother with these unlucky guys. But their eyes are also eyes, and today they must be taught a lesson. Clenching his fists, he fought 1 against 100. Of course, their level was not as high as Feng Xiai, and their fighting power was naturally not as good as his. In the end, they were beaten with bruises on their faces. The noise was too loud, and many people were forced to join in. For a whole day, the courtyards of each tribe were particularly lively. After Song Luo finished eating her own melon, she went to eat melons from other tribes. She saw Jiang Wenxiu, who was beaten into a grandson, Lan Qi, who was beaten into a broken beautiful man, and Lu Heng, who was beaten into a big meat bun. With the protection of the Black Hood, she was particularly safe. Nong Heng was beaten black and blue by his family members, and she encouraged the Nong clan members, which resulted in a more intense fight. Who told this guy to look down on her in the past? Although he has seen the situation clearly and changed now, she still remembers it. She will not take revenge on her, but will go with the flow. Hit his eyes and kick his butt. Hit him hard, make him cry. Song Luo clenched her fists, and the Nong family spiritualist, who was pulled by her to watch the fun, advised her, "Mrs. Song, don't add fuel to the fire." If she really beat him hard, it would be her family members who would suffer. Song Luo ran away in boredom. There were many places to watch the fun. She went to watch the fun in the North Territory. Yang Lingkong, who had been beaten to a pulp, suddenly saw a Black Hood, distracted, and was punched on the chin. Song Luo heard a click, and she felt her teeth ache. Too cruel, run away. After strolling to the territory of the Northern Territory, Yang Lingkong and others were also fighting fiercely. This hearty fight lasted for an hour. Originally, everyone was going to go out hunting today, but now they were in this state, so they should rest for half a day. For an afternoon, everyone recovered from their injuries, and Song Luo was bored in the study room writing furiously, using a minimalist painting method to capture the moment when each young master was beaten, adding a strong touch to his travel notes. Feng Xiai followed and watched the whole process. Fortunately, he was not too embarrassed to make his wife unable to paint. He didn't want to be recorded like Wenxiu, where someone rode on his neck. Chapter 342. Hiss, you bastard, you beat me so hard. Jiang Wenxiu was beaten so badly that his nose was swollen and his nose was snotty. But he knew that the tribesmen didn't do it on purpose, so he could only curse and leave it alone. He rubbed his sore neck. The beating was too chaotic just now. He didn't see clearly who was so bold as to ride on his neck and act wild. If I catch you, I will definitely kick you a few times. Hiss, hiss, this young tribe leader is also unlucky. I came out and was beaten by my own family members. Qin Yi, Bailey Zhu, Yang Lingkong, Fu Jiao, and others were only slightly better than him. Although their faces were not so seriously injured, they were all injured. After the fight, everyone looked at their young master again. His face was blue and purple, and he didn't look so ugly anymore. Finally, it was not so irritating. But at this time, the tribesmen from all domains took a breath of cold air when they thought of what they had done in the heat of the moment. Now his son calmed down and felt that he was quite rebellious. Bian Yin finally knew where his abnormality this morning came from, but it was too late to know it now. He had been beaten up by his family members. This beating left an indelible mark on his body and soul. After learning what happened, Bian Fujian couldn't help but sigh that there are talented people in the mainland. Looking at his son, who was beaten into a pig's head, he felt that the time for him to stay in bed and recuperate was just right. It was also the first time for Shiryaya to experience being beaten, and she still hasn't recovered. I just feel that my experience seems to be not enough, always a little bit short. The alchemists of the Shi clan surrounded him with concern. Poor young master, you were beaten like this, is your head damaged? Someone said, I have a way. He took out a jade bottle from his arms, and poured out a dark green pill. This is the brain tonic pill I just made. I guarantee that young master will be full of energy after taking this pill. Shiryaya came back to his senses. I'm fine, I don't need the pill. After saying that, he got up and left quickly. Since following Madame Song to learn from the scriptures, the things made by the clan members are quite strange. You won't die if you eat them randomly, but you will be cheated. He won't eat it. Also, he was also tricked by the bewitching mirror yesterday. Now, looking at the alchemists in the clan, none of them look good. Although he doesn't want to fight anymore, it really hurts his eyes. The best thing to do is to leave this place of trouble quickly. Since this day, the clansmen of each family dare not look directly at their young masters. The main reason is that in their eyes, the young masters are too ugly and really can't be looked at. Some martial spirit masters of the Bien clan, who were arranged to see the match, couldn't help but complain. Bien Saishio was one of them. His son was forced by his mother to meet a girl, and he was miserable. Bien's mother tried her best to persuade him. Your cousin said that the girl is very good, handsome, hard-working, and filial. Get married early, and have a few children. I will take care of them for you. Your eighth cousin is a real relative, and will not lie to you. You are not a child anymore. Blah blah, Bien's mother said a lot. Bien Saishio could not stand his mother's nagging, and finally met the girl under the witness of the matchmaker, the eighth cousin. This side made his eyebrows jump. Let's look at her face. The girl is very pretty, but the problem is that he is affected by the bewildering mirror. If she is really pretty, he must see her distorted features. But in his eyes, she is pretty. This? Bien Saishio shook his head decisively. The girl was rejected and snorted at her eighth cousin and stopped talking. The eighth cousin knew that the girl had fallen in love with her cousin's son. She pulled Bien Saishio aside and scolded him. I have good intentions to find a girl for you, but you are too picky. You don't cherish such a good girl. You will regret it in the future. Listen to my advice, that girl is really nice, definitely a good material for a daughter-in-law. Bien Saishio, she is so nice, I remember my cousin hasn't married yet, marrying her to him is just the way to show filial piety to you. This angered the eighth cousin. What are you talking about? Your cousin doesn't like such an ugly. This. She was attracted to the girl's father. Not only did he look as good as he did in the past, but he was also a son-in-law with a rich family background after his wife died. More importantly, the two of them met by chance, and didn't succeed when they were young. It happened that she lost her husband at the end of last year, so the eighth cousin started thinking about marrying him as a second wife. But people said that as long as the marriage of their daughter is not settled, they will not consider the matter of remarriage. But his daughter, because she is not good-looking, has low talent, and is picky, she is already 17 years old and still has no fiancé. His son knows that he only likes pretty girls, and that girl is definitely not in his eyes. Besides, it is better to marry the stepdaughter off. What's the point of bringing her back home? Bien Saishio, So he likes ugly ones? My mother also said that she is a real relative, and real relatives only cheat their own family members? My current situation must be because my mother let it slip. Otherwise, how could this eighth cousin cheat him? However, he only sees beauty and ugliness, and his brain is not wrong. My mother usually helps this cousin, but I didn't expect her to cheat people like this. It's better not to have such a real relative. In addition to him, other people who met also encountered embarrassing scenes. When you meet a beautiful person, you don't want to look at her again after one look. When you meet an ugly person, you look at her again and again. So the wrong information is conveyed. Many matchmakers thought that it would work out, but it didn't, and thought that it wouldn't work out, but it worked out in the end. This made many matchmakers confused. In this regard, Song Luo can only say, don't go on a blind date first. If you are affected by the bewitching mirror and make a wrong decision, won't you cry when you see the person's true face? Fortunately, there are not many people who are really confused and make decisions at this time. Otherwise, she would have more to blame. Song Luo was only worried for a moment, then she forgot about it. How could she know that there would be a follow-up to this matter? For some reason, the son of Bien Saishio's eighth cousin, that is, his cousin who had come from many different places, suddenly wanted to see this bewitching mirror. Then he was tricked, and happened to meet the Qian family girl that her mother introduced to Bien Saishio. The two of them actually fell in love with each other. The Qian family girl was also a thoughtful person. Although this person was not as good-looking as the previous one, she was also born with delicate skin and tender flesh, and had good qualifications. And for some reason, he thought she was as beautiful as a fairy, and loved her very much. The Qian family girl decisively tricked someone into becoming a live-in son-in-law, and received the contract. When the eighth cousin found out, she felt so bitter, but the matter was a foregone conclusion, and she couldn't regret it anymore. The daughter of her future husband, whom she had high hopes for, became her own daughter-in-law, and her own son was fooled into becoming someone else's live-in son-in-law. She had no way to express her bitterness. She could only force a smile, and go to the Qian mansion to attend the wedding banquet. Later, the eighth cousin's wishful thinking did not come true after all. The father of the girl from the Qian family saw that his girl had a place to stay, so he decisively married someone else. Miss Qian was also a ruthless person. She heard that there was a magical golden lotus seed that could give 7 babies in one pregnancy, so she spent a lot of money to buy one. When the man was relieved from the illusion of the bewildering mirror, Miss Qian was already pregnant with 7 babies. The son of the 8th cousin gasped when he saw the real appearance of Miss Qian, and it is said that he fled from the Qian family overnight. In response, Miss Qian said that as long as the baby was there, his father could go wherever he wanted. Chapter 343. Song Luhua did not hang around outside these 2 days. Whenever she wanted to go out, she had to wear a special headgear. She did not want to leave the impression of a toad. Jiang Wenxiu, Lan Qi and others saw each other, but pretended not to see anything. At first, they did not know why the tribesmen dared to beat them, but now that they saw an acquaintance who was ugly like a toad, they all understood. The flat facial features, the bumpy face, and the twisted face really made people want to beat him. Qin Yi and the others were silent when they thought of how they looked in the eyes of their tribesmen. I don't know which tribe's weapon refiner was the first to sew a black headgear for their young tribe leader, and it set a trend for a while. Song Luhua went out with the same headgear, and saw a pile of black headgears, and almost suspected that she had gone to the wrong place. She didn't feel anything when she wore it on her head, but everyone wore it, and she felt that the headgear seemed a bit ugly. Can't wear it anymore, it must be improved. When she wore it alone, she could still be said to be unique. Now that everyone is ugly, she has to be beautiful. So she went back to the room to think about it. Although Feng Xiai was not disturbed by the confusing mirror, he was a little uncomfortable with the strange looks of everyone. Just when he was hesitating whether to wear the black headgear that looked a little stupid, his wife brought him good news. Don't wear that thing when you go out. It affects your image. Try this hat. The gauze hat of the same color as the pure black martial arts uniform can just cover the facial features. When worn on Feng Xi's head, it not only covers the facial features, but also adds a bit of mystery. Song Luhua was very satisfied. She put on her own white gauze hat and took Feng Xi's arm. Let's go out for a walk. The couple's outfit really attracted a lot of attention when they walked outside. Song Yuan recognized his younger sister and Feng Xi at a glance. He looked at the hats that were both beautiful and could cover their faces, took out a crystal mirror to compare his own headgear, and couldn't help but feel jealous. Little sister, what kind of hat is this? Big brother wants one too. This headgear is so ugly. Song Luhua then recognized that the big fool, who suddenly rushed to her side, was actually her own brother. She looked at him and couldn't help laughing. So it's you, big brother. You look good in this outfit. When I'm free, I take you to do something big. Hearing the teasing in her words, Song Yuan felt wronged. On the dark headgear, a pair of big eyes were full of accusations against her. Song Luhua laughed again. Feng Xiai smiled and advised casually, Madam, at least keep it back. Song Yuan, It's too fake, When Song Luhua had laughed enough, she took out a bamboo hat from the jade bracelet space and threw it to Song Yuan. I prepared it for you a long time ago. I'm very considerate, sister. That's very nice, very nice. Song Yuan happily took it and put it on. His temperament instantly improved by 10 degrees. From a fierce bandit, who was ready to do something bad, he became a cold and tall guard. The 3 of them strolled around the area, attracting everyone's attention. Jiang Wenxiu took a look from a distance and said indignantly, What a Feng Xi, we are all clowns. This ugly headgear is nothing compared to the hat on Feng Xi's head. Jiang Wenxiu was jealous too. He ordered the tribesmen beside him, 1 hour, I want a hat like his head. Yes, young clan leader, I do it right away. The Jiang clan members were very sensible and answered quickly and loudly. They were also very efficient in doing things and soon communicated the matter to the clan's weapon refiners. The weapon refiners of the Jiang clan also asked Song Luhua specifically. Except for the Jiang clan, all other clans came to learn, and Song Luhua showed them the gauze hat she copied. So, the young masters finally said goodbye to the funny headgear. Ordinary clan members did not have these conditions, and still wore black headgear. That day, everyone set off for Tianquan Mansion. A group of martial spirit masters wearing black headgear gave Song Luhua a great shock. Song Luhua, I don't know how the people of Tianshu Mansion would react if they saw it. Wouldn't they think they were bad people? Chapter 344. Master, Junior Master, we received news that someone is coming from outside the city. Tianquan Mansion, Master's residence. The Song clan members reported excitedly. Great. Song Zui looked at his father, his eyes full of joy. Finally, we've waited. The father and son ignored their recent fatigue and hurriedly led people to greet them. When they arrived outside the city, Feng Xiai and his group had just arrived. Some people in the team wore hats they had never seen before, which just covered their faces. Everyone else wore a black hood. This strange outfit made the clan members feel uneasy. Song Fujian and Song Zui were even more nervous. The father and son looked at each other and frowned. "Son, is there a problem?" Song Fujian looked worried. Song Zui looked carefully and felt relieved. At first glance, this scene did seem a little wrong, but after a closer look, it seemed that there was nothing wrong. Facing his father's concerns, he comforted him, "Don't worry, there will be no problem. They are wearing military uniforms, with the logos of the major families in the 4 regions. It can be confirmed that they are the major families and forces in the 4 regions." He fixed his eyes on the martial spirit masters wearing black hoods. Everyone is like this, so their faces must be damaged. To be honest, Song Zui had no idea, and he didn't know what kind of ferocious beast had caused all of them to have their faces injured. Ordinary martial spirit masters were still okay, but those who wore hats to cover their faces must be important figures from various tribes. Even they were injured on the face, so it must have been quite difficult to get here. Luckily, although the breath of the people he watched was a little weak, they didn't look seriously injured, so he thought the journey was not too bad. Although the father and son had doubts in their hearts, they still kept smiling and greeted everyone. Song Luhua was already familiar with this kind of scene. When she was pulled out, she just had to bow. After everyone was settled, Song Zui invited Fu Jiao, Shi Yaya, Bian Yin and others into the mansion. The 3 of them were still wearing gauze hats and just lowered their heads to drink tea. Song Zui felt quite strange. "What happened to you? Why do you all cover your faces?" Fu Jiao said, "It's nothing serious. It's just that it's inconvenient for me to show up for the time being. Tomorrow we will start to clean up the strange beasts around the city. Can you come?" "Of course I'm here." The few of them had a decent relationship, so they chatted about their recent situation and then went their separate ways. On the way, Bian Yin asked Fu Jiao, "Isn't it a bit unfair for us not to tell Song Zui about this situation?" Shi Yaya curled her lips. "Won't he know tomorrow? Do we need to tell him specifically?" Bian Yin thought about it, and it seemed to make sense. Besides, Fu Jiao was his cousin, and he didn't tell him about the situation in advance. As for Song Zui, he could only wish for the best. The next day, Song Zui counted the tribesmen early and followed the team to the outside of the city. After the star-sucking cauldron drained his kidney energy, he was still a little dazed. Dragging his tired legs, he finally knew why Fu Jiao and the others were so weak. It turned out that the spiritual weapon drained his kidney energy. No wonder it was not right. Also, today, I don't know if he is too sensitive. I always feel that the eyes of these martial spirit masters wearing hoods are a little bit wrong. It seems some dislike him. He touched his smooth and handsome face, thinking about it for a long time but to no avail. Also, no wonder they came so quickly. It turns out that they have the help of spiritual weapons. In addition to the star-absorbing cauldron, there is also the particularly useful bewitching mirror. I heard that it was made by Madame Song from the southern region. If you remember correctly, Madame Song was the wife of the head of the Feng clan in the southern region. Yesterday, he didn't take it seriously. He didn't expect that these 2 powerful spiritual tools were made by her. I heard from the Song clan members, who had used it, that the bewitching mirror was particularly smooth to use. If it continues like this, the eastern region may not be able to survive this crisis safely. Song Zui was in a good mood. Fu Jiao patted his shoulder sympathetically and said, "Be careful tomorrow." "Sure, yeah. Bian Yin smiled meaningfully. Song Zui is going to be unlucky. His kidney energy was sucked today, and there will be a surprise tomorrow morning, which will surely leave a deep impression on him. Chapter 345. The next day, early in the morning, a pig-killing scream came from Zui's yard. For a moment, the whole mansion was in chaos. Song Zui kicked a clansman who flew over. Rubbing the pain on his shoulder, he grinned and cursed. "What is so ugly? How dare you hit this young mansion master?" Everyone twitched their mouths. For some reason, everyone had changed after waking up. Beauty and ugliness were reversed. Their young mansion master was particularly ugly today. He was so ugly that they wanted them to beat him up. Now he did it. Qin Yi and others had expected this situation, and they all got up early to eat breakfast and prepare to watch the fun. When they heard the noise here, everyone's eyes flashed with a look of watching a good show, and they rushed to the Lord's mansion without stopping. Bailey Zhu, Yang Lingkong, Fu Jiao, and others saw the scene and almost covered their faces. They were so embarrassed at the beginning. Fortunately, everyone was the same at that time. Except for Madame Song. No one came to see their ugly appearance. Madame Song not only watched the fun herself, but also incited the emotions of the clan members, causing them to be beaten for a period of time. Thinking of this, everyone looked at Feng Xiai with a hint of resentment. Feng Xiai accurately received everyone's resentful gazes, and he calmly nodded to everyone, pretending not to know. He secretly thought that it was not just that. His wife also collected the ugly collection of the young masters of the major families in the 4 regions. If everyone knew about it, I wonder if his wife would be beaten. Everyone rolled their eyes at Feng Xi's behavior. Forget it, don't expect her husband to be able to take charge. They are just following him for nothing. It seems that they have no confidence. Everyone focused their attention on Song Zui again. He was beaten black and blue, but even so, his appearance was hard to describe in their eyes. As long as you can't resist the urge to rush in and fight, the excitement of others is very interesting. A group of people laughed while watching. The walls of the mansion were full of heads, stacked up layer by layer. The trees outside the mansion were full of people squatting, and even many people were sitting on the roof. Song Zui took a look and almost lost his jaw. At this moment, he had to concentrate on fighting and dared not be distracted. Even if he was slow to react, he knew he was being tricked. But he only had immature guesses in his heart about how he was tricked. He was being beaten alone, and a group of people were laughing. Jiang Wenxiu jumped onto the roof. Among so many laughers, he laughed the loudest. He made trumpets with his hands and shouted to the people below, "Hit him more, right, hit him in the face. Is your young master very ugly? So ugly that my fists itch from time to time, hit him." With his instigation, the fight got worse. Song Zui had a good memory, and knew that this guy was the young patriarch of the Jiang family in the southern region. He cursed him in his heart, and made a note of him. Song Luo washed her face casually, and didn't even have breakfast. She came with a pen and paper. When she came, their fight was almost over. There were too many people watching the excitement at this time, and it was impossible to squeeze in. Fortunately, she saw Feng Xiai on the roof, waved to him, and was taken to the roof by Feng Xiai. The high position has a great view. Song Zui happened to be held by a clan member, and bitten on the thigh. Song Zui did not expect that he would be bitten for real at this moment and screamed. Song Luo was stunned. The clan members of this Song clan are a bit wild. She has watched so many games, and they are the ones who fight not very formally. This highlight moment must be recorded. Song Luo wrote and drew on the book. Feng Xiai took a look and the corner of her mouth twitched. In her album, a stick man named Song Zui was held by another stick man and bitten on the thigh, and the drooping in his mouth was drawn. Feng Xiai compared it, and found it quite vivid. Qin Yi and others saw this and came to take a look, laughing and leaning back. Then they froze. Feng Xi's wife drew an ugly picture of Song Zui. What about them? Chapter 346. Master Xiaofu, I heard that everyone is learning to refine weapons and medicine from Madame Song. The members of the Song clan wanted to communicate with the spiritual assistants of various clans, but found that what they said was very different from what they imagined. Not to say that they were exactly the same, but that they were completely unrelated. After asking, they found out that they learned from Madame Song. They had heard of Madame Song, the wife of the clan leader of the Southern Territory Feng clan. They heard that the now popular star-absorbing cauldron was refined by her. Although it absorbs kidney energy, it cannot be denied that it is indeed an excellent spiritual weapon. Even if their ancestors were tied together, they might not be able to refine such a spiritual weapon. The auxiliary spiritual masters of the Song family were very excited. They also wanted to learn the skills of refining such weapons and medicine. Therefore, they looked eagerly at their young master. Although the auxiliary spiritual masters of various domains were willing to teach them, they wanted to learn from the best master. In this regard, they identified Madame Song. Learn. Song Zui made a decisive decision. The treatment that other clans' assistants have, their clan must have. Moreover, although the spiritual weapon refined by Mrs. Song is a bit tricky, the effect and height are beyond the reach of countless assistants. The angle of the spiritual weapon is also tricky enough, and it is particularly effective against strange beasts. It is indeed worth learning. Moreover, other clans pursue progress, and they cannot fall behind, otherwise, they will be left behind sooner or later. This is a scene that Song Zui and any clan do not want to see. Song Zui thought of countless arguments, intending to exchange a family's promise for her to teach the clan members. When Song Luo heard that he was coming to visit her, she understood his intention and agreed decisively. She didn't want the promise of a family, she wanted to be famous forever. In the future, all the spiritual assistants in the world will be her students, and the families of her students are all extraordinary, and her status will be improved invisibly. Just this point alone, compared with this, all the benefits are insignificant. She calculated it with a crackling sound and took the new job with a smile. Besides, the innovations of various tribes have been carried out, and the young masters and tribesmen have suffered a lot, so how can the Song clan be left out? After watching Song Zue leave, he decisively took out the small notebook he had made before, and read it again when the time came, and then guided them to practice. Song Luo said that she had been in the industry for 1 year, and had 10 years of experience. When Song Zue came out, he couldn't help but sigh. He is really the #1 spiritual assistant in the 4 regions. His mind is hard to match. Although his Song family is now weak, once they can get through the current difficulties, they will soon be able to restore their former glory. He believed that the promise of his family was extremely precious, but this Mrs. Song actually refused, and Song Zue's favor for her increased greatly. It has been half a month since Song Zue was beaten last time, and Song Liuhua's life is no different from the past. Except for the first few days, she gave lessons to the auxiliary spiritualists of the Song clan, and then gave a little guidance, and then completely let go. Now the clansmen of Tianquan Mansion have also joined in the revitalization and reform of the auxiliary spiritualist skills. It is going on in full swing. Of course, the victims of the Song clan are also numerous. However, since Song Zue was cheated once, he has learned his lesson and refused to eat the kidney tonifying elixir said by the clansmen. It sounds nice to say that it is a kidney tonifying elixir, but who knows what good things they have learned from Madame Song. He was cheated once. Not only did he lose all his dignity, but he was also beaten black and blue. Now he doesn't even dare to go out without covering his face with a gauze hat. If he is cheated again, he is not very smart. The young masters were quite disappointed that they didn't see Song Zue's excitement again. Then, they thought that they would have a chance to make up for it in the future, so they were relieved. Song Zue knew that these people were waiting for him to make a fool of himself, and thought to himself, I won't be fooled, let's see what you can do. Next, the newly refined elixirs and spiritual weapons of the clan members were used by the clan members. They cried out one by one, and Song Zue felt that his caution was right. Following Madame Song to learn to refine weapons and medicine, the power is really not small. Of course, the current damage is not small. The clan members complained, Young Master, please manage the alchemists and weapon refiners in the clan and refine something normal. What do you think this is? Can you believe that this spiritual sword is hot? A member of the clan carefully took out a spiritual sword with his hand wrapped in white cloth. The weapon refiner gave it to me, and said it was a spiritual sword that could burn everything to ashes. It turns out it can indeed burn low-level beasts and spiritual plants to ashes, but it almost burned my hand. As soon as he said that, many members of the clan became excited. Look at my clay pot defense spiritual weapon. It is said that if you put this clay pot on your head, you can defend against beasts, but... The man knocked the clay pot on his head, and activated the spiritual weapon. Instantly, a green light enveloped his whole body. I can't see it at all, and this green light makes the strange beasts particularly excited. I tried it yesterday, and the strange beasts rushed towards me. Song Zue, He knew it was outrageous, but he didn't expect it to be so outrageous. There was something even more outrageous. A tribe member covered his round belly and smiled bitterly, and the kidney tonifying elixir, after taking it, the belly became as big as a bucket. Song Zue wiped the cold sweat. Fortunately, he had never eaten it. He had never used the new spiritual tool refined by the tribe's auxiliary spiritual master. It was too tiring. But seeing that the new spiritual weapons of the spiritual assistants of other families had begun to show results, he forced a smile and said, they also mean well. Aren't these spiritual weapons much more useful than a single spiritual sword? Clan member, this? And the spiritual medicine? Just tell me whether the kidney energy has recovered? Recovered. Song Zui clapped his hands. That's right. As long as you endure the pain for a while, there will be plenty of good days in the future. Think about the various spiritual weapons of Madame Song. Although there are occasional minor flaws, aren't they much safer? In the future, we can do the same. Countless exotic beast meat. No longer have to worry about food in the cold season. With the cooperation of this kind of spiritual tools, safety is also an extra layer of protection. Song Zui said everything, and finally drew a big and round pie for the tribesmen, and finally convinced the tribesmen with a bitter face. In fact, as the young master of a prefecture, he only had one order, and the tribesmen dared not disobey. But after going through so much, talking about the truth appropriately can also unite people's hearts. Outside the city, Feng Xiai and others were covered in dust. Feng Shan wiped his black cheeks and spit out a mouthful of black saliva. What the hell is this thing? Even the breath it exhales is black, and it's emitting black smoke. Feng Shan stabbed a monster that was not difficult to kill with a spiritual sword. This monster was the size of a black rock pig, but its entire body was pitch black. Even its eyes and teeth were black. There was no white at all on its body. The bewildering mirror was useless against this thing. You could kill it with a spiritual sword, but after killing it, problems arose again. As time passed, everyone found themselves suddenly turning black. The entire body was pitch black, and even Feng Xiai and the others were bewitched. Chapter 347. Except for the black body, there was nothing unusual about it. Feng Xiai and the others simply wiped out all the black beasts in the nearby area before returning. Wife. Song Luhua was leaning on Shiheng to read a storybook when she suddenly heard someone calling her. She looked up and saw a black humanoid creature standing not far away. It was really all black, with only a human form, and the face could not be seen clearly. If you hadn't heard it before, this thing called her wife, and the voice sounded familiar. What the hell? She was so scared that she threw the notebook in her hand. Feng Xiai took the notebook helplessly. Madam, it's me? Feng Xiai? Song Luhua rubbed her eyes, not daring to confirm. Yes. After confirming again and again that the dark-skinned person was Feng Xiai, Song Luhua was quite surprised. How did you become like this? She was not making a fuss, but Feng Xiai was actually darker than her elder brother when he turned black. He was like the bottom of a black pot. Moreover, she found that when Feng Xiai opened his mouth, even his teeth were black. Even the martial arts uniforms on his body are black, which really means he is black from head to toe. Song Luhua automatically matched the pill formula in his mind. Seeing his wife in a daze, Feng Xiai explained the beast he encountered today. The beast was pitch black, with black smoke coming out of its body, and even its blood was black. It was normal at first, but after an hour, it slowly turned black, and all the tribe members were infected. They didn't come here at this time, they all went to take a bath, and luckily they were able to wash it off. Feng Xiai tried this method and confirmed that it was useless, so he came directly to find his wife. After all, the skills of the alchemists in the clan are far inferior to his wife. If he hadn't been unable to do so, he wouldn't have wanted to trouble her. After understanding the whole story, although Song Luhua was very curious about this strange beast, this was not the time to be curious. She had to prepare the antidote. Feng Xiai had been tricked, not to mention the clan members. Song Luhua decisively entered the alchemy room. You go to the sun to bask in the sun. I try to make an antidote. How to make an antidote when it's so dark? Song Luhua had only one way, to try randomly. Since it turned black, the antidote must be a magical medicine that can make people white. She had a lot of elixirs that could make people white, and she added a lot of them at once. The first batch came out after a quarter of an hour. It was just a simple whitening pill. The effect was much worse. Suitable for women with green skin. Where in the world are there people with green skin? Song Luhua threw the things that could not be used into a corner. After washing and rinsing, she added not only whitening elixirs, but also bleaching white stone powder to the second batch. The pills that were refined could only be said to be too much, which was not advisable. The third furnace, whitening elixir, a small amount of white stone powder, and the sunlight grass that the furnace had once brought back from outside. This elixir actually contains sunlight, and it is as bright as the sun, warm and gentle regardless of day or night. It is an extremely warming elixir. Considering Feng Xi's black character, Song Luhua added a lot of it all at once. This refining took half an hour. Outside the door, Song Yuan, Feng Shan and others were now so dark that they could barely see a human figure, so the black hood was naturally unnecessary. Like shadows, they squatted everywhere. It was dark now, and no one could recognize who was who. Everyone was very quiet, even breathing lightly, for fear that the noise would affect the people in the refining room. Little did they know that Song Luhua was sitting with her legs crossed and eating snacks. Everyone only heard the faint sounds in the room, and felt that this year was particularly miserable. This was not the color from the elixir of the family head's wife, which would fade after a while. If there was no antidote, how would they live when they couldn't even see their faces? Even my own mother wouldn't recognize me when I go back. After a while, many people from various families came to the courtyard one after another. Qin Yi, Yang Lingkong, Bailey Zhu, Fu Jiao and others all came. If they didn't come, I wouldn't feel at ease waiting at home. This way, it seemed like I was used to being poisoned and came to find Madame Song. Although I'm not sure if she can cure it, I always feel more at ease when I think of her strange and weird methods. Song Yuan didn't have this worry. He had great confidence in his sister. No matter how strange the beast was, could it have as many tricks as his sister? He simply closed his eyes and fell asleep. Feng Xiai was not worried either. His wife was particularly calm. She must have made a plan in mind. He just had to wait. Even if there was no way now, it did not mean there would be no way in the future. Feng Xiai was convinced of this. At this moment, he still had the mind to read a few books. He had already finished reading the books he brought with him. After getting familiar with people from various regions, he borrowed a lot from various tribes and copied several books. He had not finished reading this part yet. It was a rare opportunity to read quietly. As time passed, the atmosphere became relaxed. Everyone smelled the aroma of medicine coming from the house, and their minds gradually calmed down. When Song Luhua opened the door, she was shocked by the black hemp lacquer humanoid creature standing, sitting, or lying in the yard wearing various martial arts uniforms. Looking at them one by one, no one was familiar. Except for the one who was sure that it was Feng Xiai holding a book, she couldn't see the rest, including her eldest brother hiding in a corner. When everyone saw her come out, they were instantly excited. Xin Ye's familiar voice sounded not far away. Feng Xi's wife, do you have any way to deal with our terrible situation? Song Luhua glanced at it, and turned away in disdain. I do have a solution. Here is the antidote. Share it among yourselves. Song Luhua waved her hand, and dozens of wooden barrels were placed in a row. Everyone was delighted. Great! Madame Song is really our savior. At this moment, they didn't care about any side effects, and they happily shared the pills. Feng Xiai took the pill, and put it into his mouth without hesitation. Song Luhua refined 3 furnaces of pills in a row, and her eyes hurt because of this group of Wuling masters with black pots. She yawned and went back to her room to rest. Feng Shan swore that this was the fastest time he had consumed the elixir made by his family leader's wife. He almost threw it into his mouth as soon as he got it. Qin Yi and others, who else? Song Yuan was happy. I said my sister has a way. Even if she is poisoned, I am not worried at all. Feng family members, or are you our wife's brother? People from all clans took the elixir and waited quietly. Otherwise, with their virtue, they can automatically ignore the side effects of the bewildering mirror. Who would recognize them on the street? It was good enough that he was not chased and beaten like a strange beast. In the house, Feng Xiai took the elixir and waited for a while. He saw the black skin on his hands gradually faded and became brighter. So he quietly watched himself getting brighter and brighter, and finally became a human-shaped light. Feng Xiai smiled. His wife's antidote really worked immediately. It was so bright that he didn't need to light the fluorescent stone at night. It could be used as a lamp by the side. Chapter 348. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, this elixir is called Lianzai Dan. Song Luhua came out of the bedroom and saw a human-shaped luminous body. Feng Xiai? The human-shaped luminous body was wrapped in white light, and his facial features were still blurry. The light from him was a bit dazzling, and Song Luhua subconsciously blocked her eyes. My wife, it's me. Feng Xiai held his forehead. How long will it take me to wait like this? It won't be long, just a month. Feng Xiai and Song Luhua adapted to the dazzling light, and started to play with it curiously, touching his hands and pulling his hair. Yes, Feng Xi's hair was also glowing. Even the black martial arts uniform on his body was covered by the light. What a fresh scene. It was the first time for Song Luhua to see it, and he could paint again later. After the surprise, he took advantage of the moment to paint, and quickly rolled up his sleeves and splashed ink. It was not easy for Feng Xiai to shine, so he had to record it for him. Feng Xiai, who watched the whole process, was helpless. After Song Luhua finished painting, she finally couldn't hold on any longer. After sleeping for an hour, Feng Xiai woke her up to eat dinner. The bright lights in the yard hurt her eyes. Everyone came to greet her happily when they saw her. Madam. Little sister. I couldn't recognize her. I couldn't recognize her at all. The blurry human-shaped lights were particularly dazzling, and it was impossible to see their true faces. If the voices didn't sound familiar, it would be impossible to tell who was who. Song Luhua kept smiling. It will disappear in a month. If there is any problem, you can overcome it yourself. Song Yuan, Okay. That's all his sister can't do. The pills she made are useful, but they have many flaws. But this time, he didn't feel anything. Even Feng Xiai is like this. It seems that there is no hurdle that can't be overcome. Song Luhua was satisfied to see that they were in a good mood. As for other families, although they were shocked, most of them were used to it. After knowing that the light would fade after a month, they calmed down. Only the Songzue side was the most lively. A group of people from the Song clan were almost scared to death by the strangeness on their bodies, and screamed in the yard. Songzue looked at himself in silence, and he seemed to understand a little. This Madame Song, not only the assistant spiritualists she taught made strange elixirs, but she herself was also like this. But, although the black poison was cured, it was not a solution to go out like this. What should I do? If I go out like this, I must not scare the people in the city. Songzue was thoughtful. The clan member interrupted his thoughts. Master, we have become like this. Can we not change back? Everyone looked at the human-shaped light ball standing with his hands behind his back in doubt. Songzue was distracted and rolled his eyes. What are you yelling about? This young master is not panicking. Why are you panicking? Other families are not panicking. I guess it's not a big problem. Songzue understood. Since his clansmen followed Madame Song to learn, he also heard a lot of news. At this moment, he was sure that these lights would disappear sooner or later. As for how long, it was just a matter of time. This is enough. Yesterday, he was wearing a black suit. Although it looked fine, he was a little nervous wearing it. He must not be a good person. This white light lingered around him, warm and gentle, like the sun in March, without any palpitations. There must be no big problem. Songzue knew what was going on. What he was worried about was how to go out in this state. After thinking for a long time, he had no idea. Forget it, the person who tied the bell must be the one who untied it. I go ask Mrs. Song. Coincidentally, Qin Yi, Yan Lingkong, Bailey Zhu, Fu Jiao, and others also thought so. As agreed, the group planned to ask. If there is no other way, ask first. Even if you cover it with a special cloth, it is better than going out like this. For such a long time, using Mrs. Song's elixir and spiritual tools, the major families tacitly sent some refining tools and medicine materials every once in a while. She has made great efforts, and we can't let her pay for good things. Song Luhua didn't know what everyone was thinking for the time being. In fact, she was also thinking about this matter. At that time, I was only concerned with detoxification, but I didn't expect it to be so bright, and I took too much sunlight. Grass, tut tut. If you go out like this, you will scare people no matter whether it is day or night. It is better to find a way to solve it. So, Song Luhua used the last fruit of the Dipsicus asper to make a lot of spiritual fruit tea for herself. After drinking the spiritual fruit, she was immediately revived with full blood and planned to fight until dawn. Hearing that Songzue and others had arrived, Song Luhua's eyes lit up, and she immediately got up and prepared to go to the front yard. Let's take a look. They came just in time, and her album needed to be supplemented. Feng Xiai smiled, put down the book, and followed. Outside, the sunset glow left only the last ray of red. But the yard was exceptionally bright. Tonight, there was no need for fluorescent stones, and the human-shaped lights illuminated the surroundings. She looked around, and the light from Feng Xiai was enough to illuminate the two of them. And with the tribesmen gathered together, the yard was even brighter. It was so bright that the room could probably be illuminated. I wonder if everyone could sleep. Song Luhua sighed all the way. When she saw Qin Yi and the others, she couldn't recognize the glowing ones. Song Luhua smiled, and her little notebook began to draw crazily in her head. For this light. Everyone nodded. It will take a month to fade away. I think of a way. If not, you can only go out like this. Although Song Luhua wanted to solve the problem, she didn't know if she had enough materials, so she didn't want to say it for sure. When everyone heard her say this, they said they were not in a hurry, and gave her the spiritual medicines and refining materials they had prepared. Song Luhua accepted them all without hesitation. Even Songzue gave some. All their other treasures were consumed within a year, but there were still some spiritual medicines and refining materials. After seeing off the group, Song Luhua began to refine. She looked through the various spiritual medicines and refining materials sent by the group and selected a lot of them. The first tripod, the elixir, failed to be refined. The second tripod, the elixir, was successfully refined, but it was poisonous and could not be used. The third tripod, the elixir, was successfully refined, but it was not suitable for the disease and could not be used. The fourth tripod, the elixir, failed to be refined. The fifth tripod, Song Luhua was already exhausted. I picked a box randomly in the jade bracelet space and poured something I didn't know into it. After pouring it out, I found that the wooden box was marked with cat claw jade. Song Luhua held her forehead. It seems that this refining is another failed. The cat claw jade was sent by Yan Lingkong. It is produced in the northern region. It is shaped like a cat claw, its color is blood red, and the material is clear. According to legend, there were fire cats above the 9th level in the northern region, so it was named after it. The palm-sized cat claw jade is indeed very similar to the claw of the furnace, but the claw of the furnace is more delicate and cute. In general, although the legend of cat claw jade is high-sounding, it is mostly used for refining coloring, or for humans to make jewelry. There is nothing special. This thing thrown in will not have any effect. Song Luhua has no hope for this furnace. Chapter 349. Half an hour later, the cauldron was successfully refined. Song Luhua opened the lid and her eyes lit up. This is so cute. She refined a red earring in the shape of a cat's paw. The pomegranate red color, the delicate and cute little cat's paw, and the full sense of detail. Song Luhua liked it very much. However, she held it in her hand and played with it non-stop. Of course, she liked it, but she couldn't wear it. Coincidentally, this thing was useful to Feng Xiai and the others, very useful. Song Luhua was delighted. She had prepared for many days of hard work, but she didn't expect that the problem would be solved on the same day. After packing up her things, Feng Xiai was still waiting for her, leaning against the bedside reading a book. There was no light tonight, and the human-shaped luminous body, Feng Xiai, illuminated the entire room. She took out a cat claw earring. Although she was reluctant to let Feng Xiai lose his light, she couldn't sleep without turning off the light. "I'm sorry, Feng Xiai," Song Luhua silently said in her heart, and then she smiled and handed him the cat claw earring. "Feng Xiai, I found a solution. This is the spiritual weapon I refined. As long as you wear it on your ears, you can suppress the light on your body. How about you try it first?" Feng Xiai stroked the ear needle in his hand and looked at his wife, who was laughing. "How to try it? Do you want to wear it on your ear? That's it, you try it?" She really didn't mean to cheat her husband. She was very curious about what Feng Xiai would look like after wearing it. Song Luhua rubbed her hands and looked at him expectantly. After looking for a while, her eyes were dazzled. Feng Xiai saw through her little thoughts at a glance. "Since my wife wants it, then wear it." He moved the spiritual tool in his palm and pinched the earlobe, and the cat claw ear needle passed through the earlobe and was worn on the right ear. The moment the spiritual weapon was put on, the light on Feng Xi's body quickly dissipated, and soon returned to normal. Without the glowing pedestrian light source, Song Luhua took out the fluorescent stone. Only then could she see Feng Xi's appearance clearly. He was already handsome, and with the pomegranate red cat claw earrings, he looked even more picturesque, with a bit of evil. His lips, which were slightly white due to insufficient kidney energy, also looked a bit radiant. Song Luhua was quite tempted. But when she thought of his rather weak body, she was immediately poured with cold water. Feng Xiai saw her tangled expression, and could only sigh helplessly. He pulled her onto the couch, rubbed her head, and whispered, "It's late, go to sleep." The next morning, Feng Xiai found something strange about himself. He couldn't help but want to make a meow in his throat. If he hadn't had strong self-control, he would have called out. And the pace of his walking, a pair of legs, always unconsciously walked in a posture that he was not familiar with. Song Yuan and others were particularly excited to see that he had returned to normal. "Feng Xiai, how did you do it?" They didn't sleep well last night. The whole room was glowing, so bright that they fell asleep very late. Seeing that Feng Xi's body was no longer glowing, Song Yuan came up to her with great excitement. Since her appearance has returned to normal, she must wear the gauze hat. The influence of the bewitching mirror is still continuing. Feng Xiai nodded through the gauze hat. "Madam, you have refined a spiritual weapon that can solve this situation." After hearing this, Song Yuan smiled and said, "That's great. Speaking of the devil will appear." Feng Shan and others were just talking when they saw her coming over. Song Luhua yawned, waved her hand, and dozens of wooden barrels fell to the ground. "These cat claw ear needles, worn on the ears, can suppress the light. Ask Qin Yi and others to get some. I'm so sleepy. I go back and continue sleeping." Thinking about the things that had not been delivered, she forced herself to turn on the phone as soon as she heard the noise. At this moment, she yawned one after another, and she was so sleepy. Feng Xiai watched her leave and said to Feng Shan, "This is the ear needle magic tool refined by Madam. Just wear it on your ear. Wear it on your ears." Feng Shan and the others opened the lid and saw that the bucket was filled with densely packed pomegranate red cat claw earrings. "Is it a little too perfect for a grown man to wear this?" Feng Yi hadn't finished speaking yet, and seeing the clan leader still standing by, he wisely changed his words. Since the clan leader has recovered, he naturally wore it. "Feng Xiai, If you keep talking nonsense, I keep you as a lamp bearer in the mansion. Feng Yi shrank his neck. He didn't want to be laughed at in this way. Seeing that their clan leader had used it, the Feng clan members were particularly relieved to use it this time. After all, the clan leader had not shown any abnormality so far, so perhaps there was nothing wrong with the spiritual weapon refined by their wife this time. Song Yuankai didn't believe it. He knew his younger sister, and he also knew Feng Xiai. This guy must be holding back something, or he was covered by the gauze hat, and they couldn't see it. He was expecting the second one. He was right, Feng Xiai was indeed holding back, so he didn't let himself meow in public. As for his pace, he controlled himself so that he would not walk too uncomfortably, and when no one saw him, he left in 3 jumps. Fortunately, his pace was fine when he was running, jumping and fighting. Feng Xiai wiped the cold sweat from his head, and thought of his wife, shaking his head with a smile. He had never seen such a strange thing in his life, and he didn't know where his wife knew about it. He was indeed a person who could create a new method for spiritual assistance. Feng Xiai spoke little, and the tribesmen did not notice anything unusual. Everyone excitedly put on the cat claw earrings, and as the light faded, the crowd made excited noises. Then, everyone found out with disdain that there were ugly people everywhere, so they put on black hoods on their own volition. Feng Yi lifted a corner of his ear, and admired the cat claw earrings on his ear. Hey, it's pretty good. He just thought it looked a bit feminine, but when he really put it on, he found that he seemed to be more handsome, and he kept looking at himself in the mirror. Meow, so handsome, he said narcissistically, and only then did he realize that he seemed to have said something strange. So handsome. Meow meow. Song Yuan, Feng Shan and others shuddered. Feng Yi, what are you meowing, meow meow? A group of people looked at each other, with a hint of surprise in their eyes. You are not a furnace? Meow 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 meow. Meow. After saying meow, it seemed like a switch was turned on. Whenever a group of people spoke, they would always say meow. They found that they felt particularly relaxed after saying meow down their throats. Song Yuan, meow, it turns out that this spiritual weapon has a flaw. Meow, you are right, meow. Feng Shan nodded. Everyone was helpless. In this situation, they had to wear it. Meow 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 meow. Meow, go have breakfast. We have to go out of town to hunt later. Feng Shan took the lead and took a big step. I feel like my walk today is a little different. Song Yuan and his group could see clearly from behind. Meow, just walk. Why are you twisting and turning? Coincidentally, Lu Zi walked by them at this time. Song Yuan twitched his mouth. Look, does Feng Shan walk like Lu Zi? Chapter 350. Meow fight! Jiang Wenqiu shouted. Jiang clan members, meow, yes. At first, everyone pursed their lips tightly, fearing that a meow sound would come out of their mouths. They are human beings. How can they learn the behavior of Madame Song's pet? However, no matter how they restrain themselves, they always show something unconsciously. Everyone simply let go. Qin Yi and others simply couldn't bear to watch. Doesn't this guy have any face? It doesn't matter if it's an ordinary clan member, but as the young clan leader of the Jiang clan, he is also like this, which always feels a bit out of place. Lan Shi envied his freedom, but after thinking for a moment, he decided to restrain himself. He didn't want to lose his image. Yang Lingkong, Bai Lizu, Fu Jiao and others were the same. Song Zui pulled the corner of his mouth and swallowed the words in his throat. He decided to be a mute for the time being. This experience also made him understand the truth. Some things will not happen if he wants them to, but he can't help it. The young masters tried their best to restrain themselves, but the tribesmen of each tribe did not have such strong self-control. As a result, the people in the city often saw martial spirit masters walking in strange steps. Why do so many people walk like this recently? The people were talking about it. Some people nodded. You know what, it looks pretty good. I try it too. Someone immediately learned it. Hey, it seems really good. This must be a new trend. I feel like I have a more noble air. No wonder they walk like this. Thus, a new trend was triggered. The martial spirit masters twitched their lips when they saw someone imitating their walk. But when they thought about the black hoods on their heads and the gauze hats worn by the young masters, they were relieved. Yes, they walked like this. It was the fashion. Everyone walked more confidently, their manners were more perfect, and there was an indescribable charm. Song Luhua occasionally went out for a walk, and when she saw it, she was surprised to see that the streets were full of people walking in a cat-like manner. She looked at the stove squatting on Shihong, and felt a little embarrassed. I wonder what these people's reaction would be if they knew that their steps were similar to those of the fire cat. Anyway, she would not expose it on her own initiative. Song Luhua insisted on her small marching steps, and went back with her head held high. She was more conspicuous on the whole street. After being destroyed day by day, all those bewitching mirrors were cracked, and could no longer be used. The tribesmen of each tribe had become accustomed to switching to the spirit sword to fight smoothly at the moment when the bewitching mirror broke. At night, Song Luhua heard that the bewitching mirror was broken, and could not help but sigh a few times. Really durable. It seems that since her level has been raised, the spiritual tools she has refined have become more durable. However, things that are supposed to break will break. A few days ago, a new batch of club spiritual tools were refined, which just happened to be a replacement. She swore that this was really the most normal spiritual tool she had refined. Song Luhua handed the spiritual tool to Feng Ci, with a brief introduction. This is a club spiritual tool. When refining it, I added the phantom grass that can confuse strange beasts. After it is activated, it has the function of confusing strange beasts, making them confused and not attacking people. At that time, just hold it, and swing it hard at the strange beasts. It is very effective in close combat. Feng Ci picked up a silver-gray stick with thorns, the length of his index finger, and nodded, I understand. The fantasy spirit grass was sent by Bailey Zhu and others. It is said to be a spiritual medicine unique to the western regions. It has a great effect on confusing strange beasts, but almost no effect on humans. There are not many. The batch sent here is the latest one produced by spiritual plant masters of various tribes in the western regions. It is relatively rare. If it had been added when refining the confused heart mirror, there would not be such a big side effect. Song Luhua could only say that they were unlucky, and didn't make it in time. The next day, the mallet spiritual weapon was distributed to the hands of various tribes. Fo Shan, Song Yuan and others looked serious. Meow, there are no thorns on the handle, so it should be fine. However, no one gave them an answer. Song Luhua couldn't either. In theory, there would be no problem, but how it would work in practice, what did her theory have to do with it? Chapter 351. Ouch. It's so heavy. Fo Shan held a 2-foot-long mallet tightly with both hands. The activated mallet spiritual weapon instantly grew larger, and except for the smooth handle, the rest of the mallet was covered with silver spikes. Everyone looked at it expectantly. Fo Shan, as the first person to activate the spiritual weapon, almost stumbled and fell to the ground because of the spiritual weapon. It was because the spiritual weapon seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. He held it with both hands, using all his strength, his face flushed, and he barely managed to hold it steady. Song Yuan laughed loudly. Fo Shan, you can't do it. You can't even lift such a small thing. Are you too weak? When this was said, everyone laughed. Fo Shan gritted his teeth and rolled his eyes at him. If you can do it, come on. Come on. Song Yuan rolled up his sleeves, spit twice on his palm, and activated the spiritual weapon. And then, under the fiery gazes of everyone, the veins on his hands burst out. Ha ha ha, brother Song, you can't do it either. A group of people laughed so loudly that Song Yuan almost gnashed his teeth. He shouldn't have laughed at Fo Shan just now. This club spirit weapon was too heavy. It was the heaviest spirit weapon he had ever held in his life. Sure enough, when the others activated their spirit weapons, they couldn't laugh. Huh? This spirit weapon is too heavy. Can it really kill the monster with such a heavy weight? They suspected that they would die of exhaustion before the monster was killed. A group of people looked sad, but they didn't hesitate when it was time to go up. In the face of the monster, the martial spirit masters of each tribe holding club spirit weapons took the lead. The group of people leading the charge grimaced, holding their strength, and slowly moved with the club spirit weapon. In the back, the teams on both sides were waiting for an opportunity to move. If anything unexpected happened, they would immediately take action to relieve the pressure on the martial arts masters who used the spirit weapon. Although Mrs. Song said that this club spirit weapon could make the strange beasts fall into hallucinations, become sluggish, and move slowly. But this thing was too heavy, and they were afraid that something unexpected would happen. Everyone stared at the reaction of the strange beast nervously. Surprisingly, the beast, which was extremely ferocious at first, slowed down its charge in confusion after seeing the silver-shining club spirit weapon. It works! Fo Shan spat out a mouthful of saliva and squeezed out from between his teeth. Brothers, charge! After shouting, he quickened his pace, picked a white sheep beast that was closest, and smashed it with a club. Before it could even scream fiercely, its head turned into a ball of meat paste. Hiss. Everyone took a breath of cold air. Although this white sheep beast is not big, it is indeed an 8th level beast. Not only does it jump at an amazing speed, it can kick people to death with one hoof, and its fur is as defensive as the 6th level blue ox beast. Even if it stands there for them to chop, it will take a long time to kill it. I didn't expect this spiritual weapon to be so powerful. It was completely silent with just one blow. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then they reacted immediately. They rushed up with all their strength, and killed one by one with a blow, enjoying themselves. The spiritual weapon was too heavy after all, but after killing 3 strange beasts, some people could not hold on. The moment the newly replaced martial spirit masters took over, they almost fell to the ground. The spiritual weapon refined by Madame Song is indeed extraordinary. After a day, the speed of clearing the strange beasts was greatly increased, but the martial spirit masters of various tribes were also too tired to lift their arms. After getting off the flying boat, a group of people could not even lift their hands, and complained bitterly. Song Luo stood in the distance and watched for a moment with a smile, and then turned around decisively. The alchemist in the clan had made a plaster to relax muscles and relieve pain, so she had to tell people to prepare it. This was not her problem. It was just that everyone was too weak to even lift a spiritual weapon weighing more than 500 kilograms. Song Luo decisively distanced herself from the matter. Song Yuan looked around bitterly, only to see a familiar back. Why hide so quickly? They can't eat her. Alas, my sister is a useless talent, so I still can't expect too much from her. Thinking that he would have to continue using this overly heavy club spiritual weapon tomorrow, Song Yuan looked miserable. At dinner time, everyone looked at the food in front of them, their hands were shaking, and they couldn't hold the chopsticks at all. In the end, they could only grab it with their hands and barely finish the dinner. All the families were like this. Jiang Wenxiu looked at it curiously while holding the bowl and chopsticks. Let's get familiar with it today, and continue to eat like this tomorrow. The Jiang family members all turned their heads to look at him, and rolled their eyes in their hearts. Look, is this human language? Can't we talk about tomorrow's things tomorrow? You have to talk about it when they are eating, which makes the rice in your hands taste bad. The Jiang clan members all despised this unreliable young patriarch. Song Luo heard that her eldest brother and Fengshan ate with their hands, so she didn't bother to eat dinner and left the room with a pen and paper. The scene in the dining room was spectacular. Everyone sat at the table, shaking their hands, grabbing a handful of vegetables or exotic beast meat, and feeding it into their mouths with shaking hands. It was quite strenuous. It was like the slow motion of a zombie. It took a lot of effort to eat a bite. Turning her eyes to her eldest brother's table, she almost choked to death on a mouthful of saliva. Feng Yin was feeding them spoonful by spoonful like a male mother. Everyone opened their mouths like hungry chicks, only Feng Qing, with a brick face, insisted on using his hands to pull the food into his mouth. Song Luo felt that her eyes were stinging. She returned to the room and focused on drawing the scene at the table. Song Yuan, Feng Shan, Feng Qing, Feng Yi and others didn't know that they had left a dark history. Feng Ci, He had to keep calm. He didn't want his descendants to see the dark material flying all over the sky. Qin Yi, Fu Jiao, Bailey Zhu, Yang Lingkong and others saw that their family members had a hard time even eating, so they kindly asked the kitchen not to prepare soup tomorrow. Song Zui saw the current state of his family members, and fell into endless contemplation. He finally understood that as long as he, the young master, had nothing to do with the spiritual tools or elixirs given by Madame Song, it would be fine. As for the family members, I can only apologize. Song Zui, who had figured it out, unloaded his psychological burden and smiled and instructed the kitchen, prepare tomorrow's meals carefully so that everyone can eat them easily. The members of the Song clan, who were completely unaware of the situation, were shaking their hands and eating dinner with difficulty. In the room, Lord Song was listening to the clan members telling about what happened today with great interest. The series of events that happened recently made him smile. It seems that he is not the most embarrassing one. When he thought of the children of each family being tossed around in a mess, he couldn't help but want to laugh. You young people still know how to live. Look, life is getting more and more interesting. Clan member, Song Zui, who just came in, Chapter 352. Since the use of the mallet spirit weapon, the progress of cleaning has been accelerated. The crowd was invincible, almost breaking their arms, and finally broke the mallet spirit weapon. At this moment, it was only 2 days away from Tianxin Mansion. Song Yuan and others couldn't help but shed a handful of sympathy tears for themselves. It's bitter. Broken my arm during the day, eating with my hands at night, and applying the hot plaster made by the alchemist at night. How bitter it is. Foshan grinned, Tonight is the last time to eat hand-grabbed rice, brothers, I use it first. Feng Yin didn't always have time to feed them. Now they were about to go to Tianxin Mansion, so he went to sort out the supplies. Now everyone had to rely on themselves. After shaking his hands, he finished a mouthful and breathed a sigh of relief. Such days would be completely over after tonight. Therefore, everyone looked quite relaxed. Song Yuan was no exception. Even if there might be other levels waiting after passing one level, at least he had passed it now. Song Luwan naturally didn't know what the tribe members were thinking, but this club's spirit weapon was broken, and a new one must be replaced. Therefore, she was particularly diligent these days. Once she had the energy, she would refine some small things casually. She didn't refine the spiritual weapon, but she did refine a special growth liquid. Why do I say special? Song Luhua only knew that it was not used to promote the growth of plants, and she didn't know what it was used to promote. It's strange. However, she refined a lot of strange things, and then threw them into the corner. There were only 2 days left to reach Tianxin Mansion. Everyone had almost packed their luggage, but they didn't expect that the journey in these 2 days would be particularly difficult. On this day, Feng Xiai returned with a very ugly face. He rarely behaved like this, and Song Liuhua's heart skipped a beat. What happened? Did you encounter some difficult beast? Feng Xiai nodded and shook his head. Not sure. I just felt a severe headache today, and I felt drowsy and couldn't concentrate. All tribes are like this. I'm afraid they encountered some unknown beast or spiritual plant outside, and were poisoned. Feng Xiai rubbed his temples, and Song Luhua could see that he was indeed enduring the pain. The veins were slightly bulging. Come, let me take a look. Song Luhua pulled Feng Xiai to sit down, and used her spiritual power to explore his body. There was no problem with his spiritual palace and meridians. Thinking of his headache, she carefully checked his head. This examination made her gasp. You have a bug beast in your head. She didn't know what kind of bug beast it was. The bug beast is sucking the blood and flesh in your brain. Song Liuhua's scalp tingled more and more as she spoke. I'm afraid it's a bug beast above level 9. So far, none of the books she had read had such incidents. Maybe. May there be a cure. Feng Xiai was so fragile that Song Luhua poured him a glass of water. Let me think about it. Song Luhua was in a dilemma. This thing had gotten into her brain, and she didn't dare to kill it. If she was not careful, she would kill everyone's brains, and then there would be no way to save the situation. Feng Xiai comforted her, you have tried your best. Don't take everything on yourself. His wife seemed careless along the way, but in fact, she had paid too much. Along the way, everyone subconsciously relied on her. He expected that no one in other families could solve this matter. I am afraid that everyone will ask to come to the door soon. You are not a god, so it is normal that there are things you cannot do. Feng Xiai embraced the warm and fragrant embrace and thought about the future. He could die, but he had to settle his wife. Qin Yi and others had a severe headache and called the alchemists of various tribes to check and found the cause of the disease. But everyone was helpless. Go find Madame Song. Soon, the Feng family's residence became lively. Everyone asked her, is there any hope? Song Luhua shook her head. This worm is in the brain, and we don't know what kind of worm it is, so we can't take it lightly. 3 days, if it can't be cured in 3 days, I can't guarantee that you can still be normal people. This worm gnaws at the brain. If it gnaws at a certain part, you may become deaf, dumb, disabled, or even die directly. She rarely became serious, and everyone had a bad premonition in their hearts. Song Luhua did not scare them. According to the current situation, the situation is not optimistic. Qin Yi and others were stern after hearing this. Is there no way out? Jiang Wenxiu couldn't believe it. If a worm eats his brain and dies, will he grow a brain in the next life? Everyone cast their eyes on Song Luhua. Song Luhua sighed, if we can find the source of this worm, there may be a way. After this, everyone frowned. This worm is strange. Even she doesn't know where to find it. Where can they find it? And there are only 3 days. This insect is rare and strange, which makes the famous Mrs. Song helpless. Given 3 days to find it, the chance of finding it is not great. But this is the last hope. No one dares to ignore it. Everyone left one after another, and woke up from the drunkenness and the bad news. Back home, rummaging through the boxes and cabinets to find the family's collection of books. That night, Feng Xiai and Song Luhua did not sleep all night, and did not close their eyes all night. The big families did the same, enduring the headache and reading books. The fluorescent stone illuminated half of the city. Everyone worked all night, looking through all kinds of books that recorded strange beasts, but no insect beast that matched the requirements was found. A day had passed, and everyone's headaches became more severe. Song Luo found that the insect beast had grown a little bigger. This was not much different from what she had speculated, which meant that they didn't have much time. After a sleepless night and headaches, the tribe members looked very bad. But she didn't dare to act rashly at the moment. Now she could only hope that someone could find the origin of this insect beast, so that she could prescribe the right medicine. Another day, everyone was flipping through books frantically, and many people had blurred vision and half-deaf ears. Some people vomited and fell into a coma. The sun rose, and Song Luo saw the meaning of death in this red for the first time. It's the last day. If we still can't find the origin of this insect beast before tonight, we can only take risks. She was also listless after 2 consecutive nights of sleeplessness. If she hadn't been at a higher level and in better health, she would have collapsed immediately. Song Luo took a deep breath. She couldn't fall down. From this moment on, she stopped reading books and only thought about how to make medicine. Even if it couldn't be solved completely, she would delay it for a day. Until the sunset, there was still no good news. Song Luo stood pale in the corridor. Feng Xia was writing something in the room, very busy. His handsome face was pale, and his eyebrows were occasionally frowned. The sunset fell on his shoulders, adding a little bit of desolation. She couldn't bear to look at it anymore, turned her eyes away, and wiped away the tears in her eyes. Song Yuan walked slowly towards the sunset. Little sister. He smiled at her, and Song Luo smiled too. It was an ugly smile. The whole city was no longer as lively as before, and it was particularly quiet and desolate. Chapter 353. Everyone deeply felt the feeling of life hanging by a thread, even though their bodies were still warm and their lives were alive at this moment. But they knew that they might die in the next moment. Time was like a sharp blade on their necks, waiting for the time to come, and it would harvest their lives. This feeling of powerlessness in preparing the end of life was ultimately unbearable. The alchemists of various races decided not to sit and wait for death anymore. They wanted to try one last time. Even if it can make everyone suffer less, it's fine. The Song clan had already arranged for the refining of medicine. Young master, this is a painkiller. You take it first and stop the headache first. Song Zui forced a smile. Leave it there, I take it. After the clan members left, he covered his aching head and swallowed the pills that the clan members had just sent. He murmured, it's the last time anyway, it doesn't matter if I take 1 pill. Just think of it as the last effort for the clan. This medicine is really useful. After Song Zui took it, his headache was not so severe. He raised his eyebrows. Not bad. Ever since the spiritual assistant and Mrs. Song started learning, the tribe members could taste all kinds of strange and bizarre elixirs from time to time, and screamed in pain. This time, the elixirs given by the tribe members did not have those. It seemed that they really put their heart into it. As soon as Song Zui finished sighing, he felt his stomach growling. He felt a surge of urge coming. Song Zui's face turned black. He covered his stomach and ran to the purification room with his legs clamped. Scam! Song Zui was forced to panic and had no choice but to go. He couldn't hold it back before he even reached his special purification room. Fortunately, the ground purification room used by the clan members was in front. At this time, who cares whether it is clean or not? Just go in. After solving the problem, another problem came. There was no toilet paper for him. He glanced at the corner and twitched his mouth. Such a thick stack. I don't know which ancestor wrote the book. They revealed all the little things in the family, without hiding anything. There were also many fabricated stories about strange stories and ghosts. I don't know where they got such rich imagination. I heard that he would feel tired when leading a hunting team, but he was very energetic when writing a storybook. Over the years, the family library has been burdened with a lot of things. Fortunately, since my grandfather, he has started to clean up these messy storybooks. Many of them have been used as toilet paper. Song Zui randomly picked a book, tore off a page, and prepared to use it. Suddenly, a line of handwriting caught his eye. There was once a bug beast, green in color, as big as sesame seeds, which liked to hide in human brains, quietly ate human brains, and grew green grass on its head. What people don't know is that Fairy Lu is no longer a human. Then, there is a rather subversive human animal love. He pulled out the entire storybook and read it page by page. Song Zui's face was as red as a monkey's, and he had a deeper understanding of his ancestors' insanity. No wonder my grandfather wanted to clean up these storybooks. Isn't this nonsense? But the insect beast on it seems familiar. Song Zui thought of the thing in his head and shuddered. I think I may have found the source of this insect beast. A quarter of an hour later, Song Zui came to Song Luhua with a torn page and the whole storybook. Song Luhua was worrying about what to do, but when she heard the news, her eyes lit up instantly. Really? Let me see it. Song Zui handed the storybook over with an awkward look on his face. The 5 big characters love story of Fairy Lu on the cover made Song Luhua's eyelids twitch. She was a little skeptical. Are you sure it's this one? Song Zui nodded with a blushing face, not daring to look at her. Song Luhua opened it, and saw the first page of white flowers. It blinded her eyes. This is clearly a book of colored stories. Turning the page, wow, the whole page is filled with colors. It was still that weird color, and the introduction of the insect beast was mixed in. It even contained the family secrets of the Song family, bloody secrets, written as if they were seen with their own eyes. Song Luhua couldn't help but look sideways. She closed the book and decisively put it into her jade bracelet space. Song Zui wanted to say something but stopped, and finally didn't say anything. Now that I know where this insect beast came from, I have a way in mind. Song Luhua was no longer panicking. It turned out that this insect beast was a special species, with a very small number of them, and they reproduced by living in the brains of other beasts. Feng Xi and others were unlucky, and happened to encounter a group of this insect beast. And they were above level 9, so the reaction was so violent. Just stimulate them to grow green grass, and they will no longer suck the blood and flesh in everyone's brain. At that time, just wait for the green grass to fall off automatically. This may be difficult for others, but Song Luhua can do it with her hands. The special growth liquid she refined a few days ago contained a lot of spiritual power, which happened to be useful. She told Song Zui, please notify all tribes to come here to get the antidote. Hearing this, Song Zui said in disbelief, you have a solution so soon? Song Luhua nodded proudly, yes, please trouble Master Song. Song Zui was delighted, and just as he was about to say something, his stomach started to growl again. His face changed, and he ran away in a hurry. Song Luhua just thought he was eager to save people. Entering the study, Feng Xi was resting with his head propped up. The eyes were dark blue under the tired eyes, and the long eyelashes moved. The next moment, she slowly opened her eyes. Song Luhua saw the documents on the table with sharp eyes, and picked them up. Madam. Feng Xi wanted to stop her, but because he had not rested for several days, and had a headache, his reaction was slow at this moment, and he did not stop her. Song Luhua opened the documents, and her nose was sore after reading them. It turned out that Feng Xi was afraid that she would have a hard time after he left, so he made detailed arrangements for her in the future. Even clothes, jewelry, food, clothing and daily necessities were involved. Song Luhua was touched and amused. The handwriting on the paper was both new and old. This guy must have revised it many times. Closed the document and put it away. Jumped to sit on the corner of the desk and raised Feng Xi's chin proudly. Looked at him deeply. Let me tell you, if you fall into my hands, it's not so easy to die. Song Luhua waved her hand and took out buckets of growth liquid. You just wait and continue to live. She came and went like the wind, and the changes were too fast. Feng Xi's mind was not very clear at the moment. It took him a long time to react, and he smiled helplessly. My wife wants me to die at 3 o'clock, so I dare not live until 5 o'clock. If my wife wants to live for her husband, she must live well even if she is skinned and her tendons are pulled out. His voice was hoarse and his eyes were lingering. Song Luhua said in her heart, it's not good to do this. It's not martial ethics. Then, she pressed his head directly, and poured a spoonful of special growth liquid on it. Feng Xi sat still, and let her fiddle with it. Song Luhua used her spiritual power to guide the growth liquid to the position of the insect beast. Feng Xi's scalp rolled for a while, and the next moment, a green seedling emerged from the top of his head. The moment the green seedling emerged, Feng Xi felt his brain relaxed. But Song Luhua burst into a silly laugh. Feng Xi, you have grass on your head, haha. The crisp laughter resounded throughout the study. Chapter 354. Meow, there's grass growing on my head. Everyone used the medicine and soon found that they had grass growing on their heads. Song Yuan trembled and touched the green grass on the top of his head, and a clear touch came from his head. It was as if this grass was born with him. He pinched the green leaves and took a deep breath in pain. Hiss, it hurts. He didn't dare to pinch it anymore. Fo Shan fiddled with it, with a strange look on his face. I heard from Madam that it will take half a month before it falls off. I'm going to Tianxin Mansion soon. Isn't it too weird to have this grass on my head? So what if it's weird? Are you really desperate and want to pull it out? Song Yuan looked in the mirror again and again. Now that the effect of the mind-confusing mirror has finally dissipated, they don't need to wear the headgear. That's good. If this thing is really pressed by the headgear, it will still hurt. Although it's a bit weird, there's no discomfort. When he thinks of the headaches of the past few days, he is still scared. The face that has been covered for a long time is shining white in the sun. The cat claw-shaped ear needles worn on the ears sparkle in the sun, making him look handsome in a different way. Song Yuan admired his face and kept grinning. Meow, hee hee, I am handsome. This grass and this ear needle do not affect my handsomeness at all. Fo Shan turned his head away with a hard-to-explain look. After wearing these cat claw ear needles, they often couldn't help meowing, and their walking style changed. After getting used to it, they naturally didn't feel anything strange. If they went to Tianxin Mansion, the scene was simply unimaginable. Our own people are all the same. You laugh at me, I laugh at you. And it's over after a little laugh. But the people of Tianxin Mansion are not like that. At that time, it is estimated that they will make a fool of themselves in front of so many people. Fengshan's cheeks twitched when he thought of the scene. At this moment, Jiang Wenxiu was screaming with green grass on his head. See, grass has grown on my head. How bizarre. Glancing at the tribe member, who also had grass on his head, he couldn't help but clap his legs and laugh. Jiang Dai, the grass on your head is really interesting, ha ha ha. It grows crooked, ha ha. The Jiang family member named Jiang Dai, the grass on his head is indeed different from the others, which grows from the center of the head, but slightly to one side. I heard that this thing eats brains. Is your brain also crooked? Jiang Wenxiu was amused by his own guess and laughed non-stop. Jiang Dai turned aside and rolled his eyes. If this guy was not their young clan leader, he would have punched him long ago. Qin Yi, Bailey Zhu, Yang Lingkong, Fu Jiao and others were speechless when they saw a blade of grass coming out of the center of the head. It was this thing that almost took their lives. Now, it actually grew on the top of their heads. As the first person to provide clues, Song Zue was not surprised. But when he saw this grass, he thought of the plot in the storybook and his face turned red. He muttered, I don't know why Mrs. Song took my storybook. Once the new styles of the martial spirit masters appeared, they quickly set off a trend in Tianquan Mansion. Everyone rushed to imitate them. The ear needles on the ears are not limited to cat shapes. There are various styles, which are overwhelming. Some of the more powerful weapon refiners soon discovered the business opportunity. They refined various ear needle spiritual tools. Ear needles the size of a small storage box, ear needles that can prevent poison. Many young men and women like it very much. As for the green grass on the head, many skillful ones made their favorite spiritual plants and flowers into small clips after special processing and clipped them on their heads. Children especially like it. Song Luhua hadn't gone out for a long time, and when she went out, she was blinded by the people on the street. Can you imagine that the streets are full of men, women, young and old walking with cat steps, wearing flower clips on their heads, and various styles of earrings, and from time to time, there are also a few people wearing black headgear or white gauze hats. I can only say that I don't understand, but I respect it. The unknown insect beasts are no longer a threat, and everyone quickly opened the passage to Tianxin Mansion. The young master of Tianxin Mansion, Kong Chichio, led the tribesmen to greet them at the city gate, and was almost shocked by the huge team of various tribes with green grass on their heads. He thought he was dazzled and rubbed his eyes. The tribesmen following him were also stunned by the scene. They discussed unconsciously, am I seeing this right? Why do the tribesmen of each tribe have grass on their heads? The companion said blankly, you are not seeing this right, I saw it too. Seeing that the other party was getting closer, everyone shut up. Kong Chichio looked at his old friends Fu Jiao, Shi Yeye, Bian Yin, and Song Zuodu with green grass on their heads, and couldn't help but twitching his mouth. Before the incident in the East region, they often interacted with each other, but this was the first time he saw them dressed in such a novel way. A closer look revealed that his face was very pale, and his steps were weak. Also, he wore the same earrings on one ear. Several grown men, including the proud young masters of various prefectures that he was familiar with, were now in such a state. Everyone was already there, so he had no time to wonder. Kong Chichio suppressed his thoughts, smiled and greeted them, and settled them in the city. At night, Kong Chichio invited Fu Jiao and others to his house for a small gathering. The five of them met again after more than half a year, and they were filled with emotion. Kong Chichio said, I thought our East region would be destroyed this time, but I didn't expect to see it again. It's really not easy. Fu Jiao smiled and said, "At first, I didn't expect it either." At that time, they were trapped in the city, resisting with difficulty, and their clansmen died one after another. They were ready to die. They never thought that the support from the 3 regions would come here. After that, following the team, it was smooth all the way. Master Ye, Bian Yin and Song Zui were also very moved by this. Of course, Kong Qiqiu invited them this time to reminisce about the past, and to inquire about some news. Fu Jiao and the others were old friends, and lived in the same area, so they basically did not hide anything. Kong Qiqiu asked again, "What is the grass on your head?" Fu Jiao shook the wine in his cup and said helplessly, "It is a rare insect beast, which is only growing on the head temporarily, and will arrive soon." Insect beast? Kong Qiqiu was curious. He had not heard of any insect beast that could sprout like a spiritual plant and grow on the top of a person's head. Song Zui saw his doubts and told him about it. Kong Qiqiu couldn't help but sigh after listening. "There are so many things in this world, it seems that my vision is too narrow." It was almost time, and they had to hunt tomorrow, so Fu Jiao and the others said goodbye. Before leaving, Fu Jiao told him meaningfully, "The days of broadening your horizons are still to come." Kong Qiqiu did not understand the meaning of this sentence at this time. Chapter 355. The next day, Kong Qiqiu sucked all his kidney energy from the Xingding, and his legs and feet felt like they were walking on clouds, weak and floating. "This is what you call an eye-opener." Fu Jiao chuckled. "Why not?" Kong Qiqiu, He had misjudged the person. Fu Jiao was clearly just watching the fun. Sure, yeah, Song Zui and Bian Yin were watching with great joy. They were all weak, so how could they miss him? However, when they saw the people of various tribes using the so-called club, when the spiritual weapon killed the strange beast, the eyes of the Kong clan members almost popped out. This spiritual weapon is so powerful. I don't know which great refiner's painstaking work it is. It would be great if we had such a powerful refiner in our clan. The Kong clan members were envious. The martial spirit master of another clan beside him looked at him sideways and thought, "Don't be envious. The alchemist in your clan will soon teach you a lesson." He thought well. Kong Qiqiu soon knew the origin of the star-absorbing cauldron and the hammer spiritual weapon. It's Madame Song. The Madame Song from the southern region. Yesterday outside the city, the two of them were just nodding acquaintances, and he didn't take her seriously. I didn't expect that she was actually a hidden weapon refining master. Master Ye told him, "You may not know yet, but this Madame Song is now recognized as the first all-round auxiliary spirit master in the 4 regions. Her attainments in refining medicine, refining weapons, and planting are extremely high, and the auxiliary spirit masters of all our tribes follow her to learn." "It's true." Kong Qiqiu was shocked. "Why would we lie to you? We were able to get here so quickly thanks to her spiritual tools and elixirs." Song Zui pushed hard, pouring out all the stories he had heard about Madame Song from other places. Fu Jiao, Bian Yin, nodded as he listened. Kong Qiqiu was amazed, and couldn't help but sigh. This Madame Song is amazing. After sending a few people away, he hurriedly wrote a contract and took it to visit. As expected, Song Luhua rejected the promise of the Kong family, and promised to teach the Kong family's auxiliary spiritual master for free. The student team continued to grow, and she was one step closer to becoming famous. Song Luhua was in a good mood, and pulled out a familiar old friend. The next day, a spiritual assistant from the Kong clan visited, and Song Luhua gathered spiritual assistants from various clans. First, she read her old teaching plan verbatim, and then took the members of the Kong clan to see the weapon refiners and pharmacists of various clans making medicine. During this period, she picked out several typical examples and explained the key points. At this point, all courses were completed. As for the rest, it all depends on your own understanding. As the saying goes, the master leads you to the door, and the practice is up to you, which is the key to the wild growth of the auxiliary spirit masters in the Tin-Wind continent. Song Luhua used this simple and crude method to develop the auxiliary spirit masters of the Kong family into her own students. As expected, those who can become weapon refiners or pharmacists have spiritual energy. After this tip, they pondered privately for a while, and figured out a way that suits them. It is said that in the past few days, the martial spirit masters of the entire Kongsher clan have been gloomy, causing everyone to complain. "Are the weapon refiners and pharmacists in our clan crazy? Can you believe it? They made a bunch of that for me to eat. It almost stank to death." "Which one?" The young martial arts master beside him didn't react for a moment. "A bunch of that." The young martial arts master suddenly reacted, with a look of astonishment on his face. "No way. The other martial arts master's face turned green. Is it the kidney tonifying elixir made by Ant 17? Yes. The martial arts master's face turned pale. That bunch of that should be the kidney tonifying elixir. Just because he had eaten it before. No wonder Ant 17 disliked their pretentiousness, because she had given a lump to the brothers in the clan at the beginning. Seeing that people refused to eat it, she even carved it with a cake mold. It smelled bad and tasted weird, so he ran to the toilet all night after eating it. And spiritual tools. The martial spirit masters of the Kong clan talked about their painful experiences during this period. Finally, they came to a conclusion. Mrs. Song is really so terrifying. With her own strength, she led the entire clan's auxiliary spirit masters astray. Chapter 356. Bah, I'm not clean anymore. In the wild, everyone was surrounded by a group of pouting beasts. The beasts were gray and white, with pouting mouths. Everyone rushed up, and was about to use the spirit sword to give them a fatal blow. Suddenly, the beasts flashed quickly, and smacked the spirit master in the mouth. Everyone felt a burning pain in their mouths, and covered their mouths, and wiped them disgustingly. The club spirit weapon was scrapped, and at this moment, they didn't expect that this thing was so fast. I thought they were small, their claws were not very sharp, and they should not be difficult to deal with, because they were sucked of spiritual power by the star-sucking cauldron. Who knew that these little things were so fast? Many martial arts masters were attacked before they could react. Once they were kissed by these pouting beasts, they would feel dizzy, their mouths would turn black, and they would fall to the ground. Feng Xiai and others saw that the situation was not good, and hurriedly shouted, "Cover your mouth." As soon as the order was given, many people were hit. Because these pouting beasts were extremely fast, some people were kissed on the face before they could cover their mouths. Feng Xiai quickly cut a dart beast with a sword. The dart beast was indeed not difficult to kill, provided that one could outrun them. However, few martial arts masters on the scene could catch their shadows. Except for a few people such as Feng Xiai and the masters and elders of various tribes. Seeing that the situation was not right, Feng Xiai and others decisively ordered a retreat. When they returned to the city, many tribesmen had purple lips and mouths, foamed at the mouth, stiff bodies, and were unconscious. Seeing that the flying boat had returned so early, Song Luhua thought to herself that it was not good. According to her experience, something must have happened. Sure enough, after a while, she heard the sound of chaotic footsteps coming from the outer courtyard, and everyone was busy and noisy. Feng Xiai hurriedly carried a cage into the inner courtyard. In the cage, a gray-haired, furry beast lay softly at the bottom of the cage. Feng Xiai took a few big steps forward. "Madam, our tribe has been poisoned by this beast." Then, he told her what happened today. Song Luhua walked around the beast in the cage and looked at it carefully. When she saw the beast pouting its mouth, she turned away with disgust. This mouth looks quite unique. Just like a chrysanthemum. Song Luhua listened to Feng Xi's description of Feng Shan and other situation and decided to go and see for herself. When they arrived at the outer courtyard, many pale-faced tribesmen were lying on the bluestone floor. White saliva stuck to the purple lips. Song Luhua checked and found that they were indeed poisoned. I don't know how poisonous the mouth of the pouting beast is. It can poison the martial spirit masters with just one bite. The slightly rising and falling chest made Song Luhua feel relieved. There is still time to save lives. I will go to refine the antidote first. After comforting the tribesmen, Song Luhua began to refine the antidote behind closed doors. She refined several cauldrons in succession, adding all kinds of detoxifying spiritual medicines. One cauldron succeeded, and one cauldron failed. The antidote produced by the successful cauldron was not suitable for the disease. Fortunately, in the third cauldron, she added a pink detoxifying datura spiritual flower, and finally succeeded in refining a cauldron of antidote. After opening the lid, a cauldron of pink antidote looked crystal clear. Song Luhua didn't care about her fancy dress, and put away the cauldron. Feng Xiai had changed his clothes, and was checking the situation of the tribesmen in the outer courtyard. Song Luhua waved at him. "The antidote is ready. Give it to the tribesmen first." "Feng Yin, send someone to notify the tribesmen to get the antidote." Song Luhua took out the refining cauldron and said to Feng Xiai, "Just apply these antidotes on your lips, and wait for a while to detoxify." Feng Xiai rubbed her head. "Fortunately, my wife is here. Feng Yin, I leave the detoxification to you." Seeing that his wife looked tired, he carried her back to the room to rest. Feng Yin was used to doing these things, and soon arranged for the tribesmen to take some pink ointment to apply to the poisoned tribesmen. During this time, members of other families came to collect the elixir, and he arranged them in an orderly manner. Each member of each family brought a wooden barrel, and each person received half a barrel, and soon dispersed. At this time, the Feng family member who first applied the medicine had woken up. Fo Shan and Song Yuan opened their eyes at the same time, waiting to see each other. I remember that I was kissed by that disgusting beast. Song Yuan shuddered when he thought of the bad memories. Me too. Fo Shan also looked disgusted. It's really stinky. As they talked, they suddenly found that the color of each other's lips gradually changed, from normal lip color to darker. Turned pink, became brighter. Your mouth changed color. The two pointed at each other in surprise, and spoke at the same time. Song Yuan had a bad premonition, and hurriedly took out a mirror to look at it. Sure enough, he saw that his mouth turned red, not bright red, not pure red, and certainly not the normal lip color red. It was a color he couldn't describe, and it looked particularly ugly with his slightly dark face. Fo Shan was the same. The two looked at each other, only to feel their eyes stung, and turned away unnaturally. They remembered that they were kissed by the strange beast with a pouting mouth, and then they lost consciousness. Combined with the strangeness at the moment, they quickly guessed the general situation. I guess my little sister made an antidote to detoxify us. There was no other explanation. Fo Shan looked at the tribe member who had just woken up. After a while, the lip color became exactly the same as theirs. The corners of his mouth twitched. You're right. Song Luo woke up and saw that everyone was alive and kicking again, so she felt relieved. When she saw the eye-catching pink lips appearing on the face of a long rough man, she sprayed out a mouthful of spiritual fruit. Ahem. Death. Ahem. Barbie pink. Hiss. The rough men with death Barbie pink lips looked at her, and Song Luo felt that her eyes were blinded by the spiciness. She couldn't handle this color. These rough men. Song Luo really didn't expect it. She thought it was just a slightly darker lip color than normal, but it was death Barbie pink. This is really unexpected. If my family members have become like this, what about other families? As expected, when Qin Yi, Lan Shi and others saw their family members' mouths turn into this color, they almost choked to death. Bring water quickly. I want to wash my eyes. Jiang Wenxiu laughed enough and shouted that he wanted to wash his eyes. The Jiang family members were too lazy to pay attention to him and were quite depressed. I don't know what the material of Madame Song's medicine is. It can't be washed off. Bai Lizhu, Yang Lingkong, Fu Jiao and others were also shocked. They all said they couldn't bear to watch. Green grass on the head, cat claw ear needles on the ears, pink lips. When these factors appear together on a rough martial arts master, it is like a disaster for the eyes. Everyone shuddered when they saw the current appearance of the family members. Fortunately, they hid quickly. Chapter 357. Song Zui thought he had seen the world, and no matter how outrageous the things were, he would not laugh. But now, looking at the appearance of his clansmen, he could not help but smile crookedly. If father knew, he would probably laugh too. The clansmen of the Song clan had been tortured by their own clansmen and Madame Song's various spiritual tools and spiritual medicines. Hearing the merciless ridicule of his own young master, he deliberately confronted him in front of him to show him. It was not until Song Zui could not bear it anymore and ran away that they complained to each other. This was the first time Kong Chichio had seen such a situation, and he was dumbfounded. How could this happen? The Kong clan members were quite experienced, and had been poisoned by their own spiritual assistants many times recently. This situation was obviously left behind by the detoxifying spiritual plaster. I think it should be fine. I heard that this medicine was made by Madame Song, who was known as the #1 spiritual assistant in the 4 regions. The spiritual assistants in their family followed her to learn, and these days, they have made many incredible spiritual tools and pills. They took it, and although they had various problems, it was effective. At least the effect they said was fine. Although there were some problems in other aspects, there were no major problems. Kong Chichio nodded, and sent people to inquire about the dynamics of various tribes. I heard that after the tribes used the antidote, they were busy for a while, but then they became quiet. I felt relieved. Although the color of the mouth was not very good, but the life was saved, this little problem was nothing. Of course, with their image, they are still very conspicuous when walking on the street now. The martial spirit masters of various tribes didn't take it seriously. What are you afraid of? People in the city love to follow the trend. I'm sure our trend will soon lead the entire Tianxian mansion. Everyone thought that this was indeed the truth, so they went out on the street with their heads held high. In response, the people in the city looked at them with an indescribable look. This color, applied on the mouth, really doesn't look good. It's not red, it's not pink, it looks weird. I'd rather die than learn from them. Now that you mention it, I also think their aesthetics are not that good. That's right. Don't think of poisoning us with such an eye-catching aesthetic, humph. There are many people in this city who have normal aesthetics and are determined not to follow the trend. After knowing this, Song Luo laughed. It seems that there are still sober people in the city. Song Yuan, Feng Xiai, and Song Yuan had a small gathering, and Song Luo laughed unscrupulously. Feng Xiai ate the food calmly, and Song Yuan turned aside with his bowl. Doesn't he have any face? Seeing her eldest brother's awkward appearance, Song Luo couldn't help but make another joke. What are you afraid of? It will be gone on the 25th at the latest. As her medicine refining skills improve, the side effects of some medicines will not last that long. After getting the exact date, Song Yuan smiled again. The big lips, the big mouth of deathly Barbie pink, were grinning to the corners, making Song Luo's eyelids twitch. To be honest, the impact was too great. She ate a few mouthfuls of rice to calm herself down. After hearing that the club's spirit weapon was broken, Song Luo searched in the space, and finally found a suitable new spirit weapon. When Song Luo refined this spiritual weapon, she also thought it was outrageous. But these few days, she didn't have the energy to refine a new spiritual weapon, so she had to make do with it for now. Cleaning up the strange beasts is the most important thing. The spiritual weapon is in the shape of a trumpet. Song Luo threw a bunch of thumb-sized spiritual weapons to Feng Xiai. This spiritual weapon is based on sound attack. Once it is activated, the martial arts master can yell at the trumpet, and get twice the result with half the effort. Feng Xiai soon realized the unreliability of this spiritual weapon. But this was his wife's good intention, so he smiled and nodded, "Thank you, my wife." The next day, everyone used this new spiritual weapon. Song Yuan, Feng Shan and others speculated about the weakness of this spiritual weapon. I don't believe it's that simple. According to Song Yuan's understanding of his sister, this spiritual weapon must have flaws. Feng Shan rolled his eyes. Aren't you talking nonsense? When has the spiritual weapon refined by the clan leader's wife ever been simple? Last time, the club's spiritual weapon seemed good, but it still made them eat handheld rice. Since this is a trumpet spiritual weapon, just plug the ears first, isn't it? Song Yuan agreed. So, when it was time to use it, everyone was cautious and blocked their ears. After injecting spiritual power, the thumb-sized trumpet spiritual weapon became half the length of an arm, and the opening was aimed at a strange beast. Song Yuan selected a strange beast, and aimed the trumpet spiritual weapon at it. He tightened his abdomen, inhaled, and sank his breath into his spirit. Ah! The next moment, a high-pitched and loud male voice spread out with the trumpet spiritual weapon, and quickly flew towards the strange beast it had chosen. The figure of the strange beast that rushed over paused, and then fell to the ground, rolled for a while, and then blood flowed from all 7 orifices and disappeared. At the same time, Song Yuan felt his head buzzing and his ears were distorted. At this moment, the sound from the outside world could not be heard at all. He only saw many tribesmen moving their mouths excitedly, saying something unknown. He shook his head, and came back to his senses after a long time. He happened to hear a martial arts master excitedly saying, "This spiritual weapon is useful." Song Yuan, It was indeed useful. Not only did it kill the strange beast, it almost deafened him. After using it a few more times, Song Yuan was completely exhausted. He smiled bitterly, and stuffed the spiritual weapon into a martial arts master's hand, not being able to hear what he was saying at all. He just said, "I can't do it anymore." Little did he know that his voice was so loud at this moment, that the martial spirit master, who was handing over, was startled. "You scared me. Why are you so loud?" However, Song Yuan couldn't hear his voice at all, and walked to the back to rest. After a while, the tribesmen came to rest one after another. Feng Shan sat next to him. They only saw each other's pink mouth moving, and couldn't hear what the other said at all. In the end, they were all silent. "Take out the soundproof cloth stuffed in your ears. This thing is useless." Feng Xiai, Qin Yi, and others noticed the strangeness of the crowd at a glance. For this, they could only express sympathy to their family members. Bailey Zhu, Yang Lingkong, Fu Jiao and others could also see it, but they just blinked their eyes and forgot about it. They used the spiritual weapon refined by Madame Song, so it was normal for such a situation to occur. Song Zui also said that he was used to being cheated. Look at the usual look of his family members. He was a little dazed. Kong Chichio looked at the surrounding tribes, and none of them said anything, so I didn't say anything either. Therefore, after this hearty battle, many deaf people were born in the major families. The flying boat on the return journey was particularly quiet. Feng Xi and others were a little uncomfortable with the quietness. In response, Song Yuan and others said, "What can you say? No one can hear you even if you say it. It's a waste of saliva. I shouted all day today, and my voice is hoarse." Chapter 358. With the increase of manpower, the road to Tianxian Mansion was soon opened. The lord of the Su family in Tianxian Mansion had died a long time ago, and now all affairs in the city are handled by the young Lord Su Rongbai. The Su family cheered when they received the news of reinforcements. When they saw the appearance of the members of the major families, their smiles froze slightly. These red lips were strange, with green grass on their heads, which was not quite what they imagined. Su Rongbai looked at the leaders of various families, who also had green grass on their heads, and his eyelids twitched. But he wisely didn't ask. A group of Su clan members all looked at everyone with doubtful eyes. Song Yuan and others have seen this kind of scene many times, and they don't feel anything anymore. Look, you will be the same sooner or later. Feng Shan found that he was thicker skinned now. If you want to look anyway, you can't lose a piece of meat. The clansmen of the major families, including Qin Yi and others, did not have any fluctuations. Yang Lingkong, Bailey Zhu and others were elegant even with green grass on their heads, and they were not messy at all. Su Rongbai led everyone to settle down, and invited Fu Jiao, Shi Yeye and others to have a small gathering. Su Rongbai looked at Fu Jiao and the others, and was slightly stunned, with a lot of emotion. I didn't expect that we would meet again. He was dressed in black, with a calm expression, and there was a bit of melancholy in his words. Fu Jiao patted his shoulder. Don't think too much, as long as you are alive. The revival of the family is just around the corner. Su Rongbai smiled, nodded, and drank the strong liquor in the cup. The next day, after he used the star-absorbing cauldron, he no longer had time to be sad. He thought that he had been pure and abstinent for 26 years, but his kidney energy was sucked away by a spiritual weapon. This fate. However, Fu Jiao and others, as well as the young masters of the 4 regions, were all like this, so he soon let it go. I heard that this star-absorbing cauldron was made by that Madame Song from the southern region. I didn't expect it. In the afternoon, Su Rongbai saw the trumpet spirit weapon that killed all directions, and he looked at Madame Song with a new eye. At such a young age, with such ability, even the powerful alchemists in the clan are far inferior to her. I only saw her once yesterday, but I didn't expect her to be so hidden. He had never thought it was impossible. The world was ever-changing. The East region, which had stood for tens of thousands of years, was almost destroyed. When would it be impossible? Besides, Fu Jiao and the others were not the kind of people who spoke nonsense. He had no reason not to believe. After that, it was even more lively. I heard from the spiritual assistants in the tribe that the methods of refining medicine and weapons in various tribes were quite strange. The spiritual sword and the spiritual pill had become the oldest spiritual weapons and pills. They seemed out of place. And all this was done by Madame Song of the southern region. Since it was a family matter, Su Rongbai naturally could not fall behind, and soon he personally went to the door and invited a master for his own auxiliary spiritual master. So many families had participated before, so it made no sense for the Su family to not agree. Song Luo quickly made the decision. After the class, the auxiliary spiritual masters and martial spiritual masters of the Su family both ushered in a new look. Occasionally hearing the complaints of the Su family members, Song Luo nodded with satisfaction. Only when everyone participates can we make progress. The days that followed were very boring. From time to time, the wailing of the Su clan members could be heard. Song Luo was used to it. Occasionally, she would go to see the show. The green grass on Feng Xi's head finally fell off one after another, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. During this time, the cat's claw-shaped ear needles could also be untied. Everyone cheered. Great, finally no more meowing. Meow. Paw. Fo Shan slapped his mouth and smiled with his white teeth bared. Don't walk so strangely in the future. If people knew that you were learning to walk with a spirit pet, wouldn't they laugh their heads off? Song Yuan felt awkward every time he saw the stove moving back and forth in front of him. Compared to these, it seems that kidney deficiency is not a problem. Feng Yi smiled happily. Fortunately, my younger sister's trumpet magic weapon can only make us dizzy and deaf temporarily. Now we have nothing else on us, and we are really light. Song Yuan almost danced with joy. Feng Qing's cold face also became a little soft. Qin Yi and others were very happy that the grass on their heads was gone. He said, Today, the young patriarch will treat us. Qin Heir, take out the century-old snow wine I treasured and let everyone taste it. It was the first time for him to have grass on his head. God knows how uncomfortable it must be to go out with this thing on his head every day. Even if I have kidney deficiency, it is not so uncomfortable. It finally fell off today, so I closed the lid to celebrate. By the way, there is also the 1,000-year-old snow wine. Take a jar and send it to Feng Xiai and his wife. On this day, all the major families were extremely happy, as if it was a festival. Jiang Wenqiu couldn't help jumping up and down, tumbling and jumping happily in the air. Haha. I haven't been so happy for a long time. Comfortable. The Jiang clan members saw him running around like a monkey and twitched their lips. They couldn't bear to watch. They didn't want to admit that this was their young clan leader. Today was a good day, but it seemed a little strange to be so excited. They were also happy, but they always felt that their happiness was a little inexplicable. Lan Shi looked at the cheering clan members and couldn't help laughing. It was indeed worth being happy. First of all, the green grass on his head was gone. He hadn't even gotten married yet, but his head was green. It really didn't look good. Since he took the ear needle magic weapon, he has been restrained for a long time. He has to be careful about his words and actions at all times. He is always uncomfortable when he is too restrained. Now, these two things are gone, just like regaining freedom. Naturally, he is happy. But the tribesmen seem to be too excited, which really makes him laugh and cry. Bailey Zhu, Yang Lingkong, Fu Jiao and others are also relieved. Seeing the tribesmen's rare excitement, they plan to hold a small banquet. During the period, he was not stingy to take out the treasures and share them with the tribesmen. The Feng family also cheered enthusiastically. Song Luhua and Feng Xiai walked out and received many greetings from martial spirit masters. Meet the clan leader and clan leader's wife. I hope the clan leader is healthy and the wife is healthy. Everyone walked briskly and smiled. Song Luhua felt quite strange. Why are you so excited? Feng Xiai, who knew everything, pinched her little hand, stopped, and smiled. You don't need to wear ear needles, and don't need to bear the green grass, so you are naturally happy. Song Luhua was stunned for a moment, and couldn't help laughing. If she remembered correctly, all of this was related to her. It was rare that the tribesmen didn't roll their eyes when they saw her before. It seemed that they were all soft-hearted tribesmen, so Song Luhua decided to make an extra effort and give them another gift. I heard that the trumpet's spiritual weapon was broken, so it's not so convenient to clean up the monsters. I will refine a new spiritual weapon in the next few days to let everyone relax. Feng Xiai lowered his eyes and smiled softly. My lady, the tribesmen will be grateful for your kindness. Chapter 359. Qin Yi and others successively sent their treasured wine to celebrate. Song Luhua, I have received everyone's sincere hearts, and the new spiritual weapon will be arranged immediately. At that time, Song Yuan was eating a banquet with everyone, and he couldn't help sneezing. The next day, Song Luhua got up early to work. After a day of busy work, her spiritual power was exhausted, and she was exhausted. Finally, she refined a satisfactory spiritual weapon. I am very satisfied with this lethality. Among the refining materials sent from the western regions, there was an extremely hard stone. She spent a lot of effort to refine it. With the help of various materials and several pieces of seven-change stone, it took several hours to finally refine a spiritual weapon with considerable lethality. After a long period of relaxation, she gradually regained her strength. She got up from the floor and opened the lid of the refining cauldron. A cauldron of silver embroidery needles shone with silver light and cold light. Song Luhua explored their power and was quite satisfied. Feng Xiai returned and saw that she looked pale. He felt distressed and helped her sit down. Don't over-refine. Song Luhua saw that his eyebrows were tightly knitted, and he looked really angry. He hooked his finger on Feng Xi's palm. I won't do that again in the future. Feng Xiai snorted and laughed. Then, my lady, don't talk about the fallacy that I was yesterday, and I am not today. Song Luhua smiled and promised, I won't do that again. Feng Xiai could see her stubbornness, sighed helplessly, and stuffed a cup of warm water into her hand. Nodding her head, I hope so. After dinner, Song Luhua threw out the refining cauldron and looked at Feng Xiai proudly. This is the spiritual weapon I refined today. Everyone can have one. Feng Xiai looked at the embroidery needles filled with the cauldron, a little surprised. Embroidery needles? Yes. Song Luhua stood up and walked around the cauldron a few times. Don't underestimate these embroidery needles. They are quite lethal. She took one from the cauldron, pinched it between her thumb and middle finger, and raised her little finger to make an orchid finger shape. When the time comes, just run your spiritual power and shoot at the beast the pain will penetrate your bones and marrow. After piercing into the beast, you can recall it. As long as you find the weakness of the beast, it's no problem to harvest a beast's life with one needle. Feng Xiai naturally did not doubt the usefulness of her spiritual tools, but when he thought of a group of men going into battle with their fingers raised, he felt a little funny. Feng Shan and others were happy for a day, and felt that life was getting more promising. At this moment, Feng Xiai even took out the refining cauldron, and everyone wailed in their hearts. They saw two things now, and they were a little scared. One was the wooden barrel, and the other was the refining cauldron of their family head's wife, which looked like a water tank. Once such a thing appeared, it meant that they were unlucky, and had to eat all kinds of strange detoxifying spiritual medicines from their own wife. Or maybe his wife had refined new spiritual tools for them to use. Of these two, the former makes people cry, while the latter makes people feel heartbroken. Song Yuan muttered, "I finally know why I sneezed yesterday. It turns out that my little sister was thinking about me." Fo Shan managed his expression well, and as soon as the head of his family gave the order, he led people forward to distribute the spiritual tools. Feng Xiai coughed lightly. "Feng Shan, distribute the spiritual tools to everyone." Then, he told everyone how to use the spiritual tools, and then turned and left. After he left, Feng Shan and his group rushed to the refining cauldron with wailing. "Needle! It's a needle! It's an embroidery needle!" They didn't doubt the usefulness of this embroidery needle, but was it really okay for a group of grown men to curl their fingers? Song Yuan subconsciously touched his mouth. His pink lips were already eye-catching enough. If he curled his fingers again, this would be... This time it was Feng Shan's turn to persuade him. "Brother, take it easy, everyone is using it." According to the amount of refining cauldron used by the wife of the head of the family, it would be absolutely no problem for everyone to have one. He didn't reject the orchid finger. After all, as a man who could sew his own socks, the embroidery needle was a familiar spiritual realm to him. Anyway, he had lost all his face long ago, so he didn't care about this anymore. Now that the Su family had also joined in, it would be a good show to watch. The brothers understood, and showed expressions of watching a good show. Qingyi spat out a mouthful of tea when he heard how to use the embroidery needle's spiritual weapon. Orchid finger? Exactly. The Feng family members delivered the things and left. Qingyi clicked his tongue a few times. "It's just the orchid finger, the tribe won't lose a hair." Yang Lingkong and others also found it quite interesting after hearing this. "We just held a small banquet yesterday, and we will give them this kind of spiritual weapon tomorrow. I wonder if the tribe will be so happy." Yin Xinyan smiled. "It doesn't matter whether they are happy or not. The most important thing now is to clean up the strange beasts." Wadling Jun shook his feather fan. "Tomorrow, the Su family will be very lively." Several people looked at each other and smiled tacitly. Bailey Zhu was also discussing, "Use Madame Song's various strange spiritual weapons more often, so that you can adapt to the spiritual weapons made by your own weapon refiners in the future. According to my observation, Madame Song's spiritual weapons are actually the most reasonable and safe compared to the spiritual weapons made by our people." Xiao Yuqing chuckled. When everyone thought about it, it seemed to be true. Nowadays, the pharmacists and weapon refiners of each tribe, in addition to refining the necessary spiritual swords and replenishing spiritual pills, are concentrating on thinking about new refining methods. Although the progress was rapid, there was still a huge gap compared to Madame Song's more mature spiritual weapons. Often, the tribesmen who were useless were pitted. It was hard to describe the scene after they saw it. At least most of the things Madame Song refined were just embarrassing, not painful. Fu Jiao, Shi Ye and others also thought of this. The innovation of auxiliary spiritual masters has just begun, and there is still a long way to go. Distribute the spiritual weapons to the tribesmen, one for each person, and continue hunting tomorrow to try to open the passage to Tianshu Mansion as soon as possible. At that time, gather all forces and explore the central region first. Su Rongbai was flattered to hear that the Feng family sent a spiritual weapon. He really didn't expect that this Mrs. Song was not only highly accomplished in refining weapons, but also so generous. He quickly ordered the Su family to invite the person in. When he saw that the spiritual weapon sent by the Feng family was an embroidery needle, he couldn't help but twitch his mouth. This spiritual weapon is... The Feng family felt that they hadn't seen such a reaction for a long time. However, he still smiled and explained, "Young master guessed right, this is indeed an embroidery needle, and it is also a spiritual weapon." After saying that, he held an embroidery needle in his hand and demonstrated how to use it. "You can use it like this when the time comes." After saying that, he immediately left. Su Rongbai, ? He took one and imitated the actions of the Feng clan member just now, and was silent for a while. He told the Su clan member to come in, take it out, and share it among the clan members. The Su clan member, who was given an embroidery needle, had his eyes wide open. The next day, everyone used the embroidery needle's spiritual weapon. They found that it was really useful. An experienced person could kill an 8th level monster in 5 or 6 times. But the problem was that they found that after using this embroidery spiritual weapon, the embroidery needle could be retracted, but the orchid finger could not be retracted. Chapter 360. In the evening, Song Luo unexpectedly received a group of tribesmen with raised fingers. Song Luo was overjoyed. Ha ha, ha ha. The tribesmen all looked at her with resentful eyes. Song Yuan glared at her. Why are you laughing so loudly? Ha, oh then I won't laugh anymore, you guys continue. Song Luo turned and entered the inner courtyard. Everyone heard even louder laughter coming from the inner courtyard. Song Yuan, my sister is happy to see everyone return safely, so she laughs. Everyone, you don't even believe this. Song Luo almost burst out laughing, and had a very comfortable dinner. But Song Yuan, Feng Shan and other men were not used to eating with their fingers raised. In the end, they just raised their fingers and grabbed the food with their hands and fed it into their mouths. Feng Ying couldn't hold back his smile, and said, TSK, the way of eating with hands was not learned in vain, and it was used again. However, as a qualified Yucheng, it was his duty and responsibility to be friendly to his fellow tribesmen and make everyone eat comfortably. Feng Ying had people cut a lot of bamboo sticks and skewered a lot of barbecue. Song Luo also ate barbecue for a while. One has to decide that people are forced to do things. Look, Feng Ying even made barbecue. Recently, the people of Tianji Prefecture have found that the aesthetics of people of all tribes have become more and more strange, which makes them doubt the previous fashion. However, the woman seems to have seen something. But the martial spirit masters of all tribes are like this, so they can't say anything, they just mutter a few words in private and then fall silent. The tribes were already used to these reactions. Only Su Rongbai, the new member, could not come back to his senses for a long time. But he gradually integrated into it. With the concerted efforts of everyone, and the help of various spiritual tools, the passage to Tianshu Mansion was quickly opened. Master Xiaofu, it seems someone is coming. The Shi clan members found that there were fewer strange beasts outside the city in the past few days. After reporting this matter, the Shi clan members were afraid that these were traps set by strange beasts, so they became alert. I didn't expect to see a human figure today. Shi Chansheng received the news and stood at the city gate looking into the distance. Sure enough, there were human figures. It seemed that there were quite a few. He was shocked, and then clenched his fists, and followed the growing human team closely. Soon, he found the shadows of the other 6 families in the east region in the team. Prepare to open the city, and welcome guests from afar. Yes! He gave an order, and the Shi clan members on the city wall were excited. Fu Jiao and others approached and happened to see Shi Chansheng opening the city gate. Smiled. I wanted to contact you in advance, but the communication stone didn't respond. Shi Chansheng smiled bitterly. Since a certain day, all the communication stones in the city have stopped working, and the news can no longer be transmitted. The two exchanged a few pleasantries, and Shi Chansheng greeted Feng Xiai and others, and settled them in the city. Song Luo was sorting things with Yang Ma, and Shi Hong suddenly shouted to the sky, and then rushed into the sky and disappeared. Song Luo was surprised. This guy usually brought a stove and a cute cow when he went out, so why did he run away by himself this time? She didn't think much about it. Anyway, it would come back on its own when the time came. Sure enough, when the sky gradually darkened, Shi Hong fluttered and landed in the yard. From its claws, several round things were thrown out. At this moment, the yard was lit up with fluorescent stones, as bright as day. The round little things were gray and spotted. They were birds and beasts, 1 big and 7 small. After rolling on the ground, it raised its little head, shook its head, and slowly raised a gray stick-like object from one side of its wings. It looked a bit like the antenna on the back of a signalman. The moment they put up their antennas, she sensitively felt something strange in the air. It was hard to explain. Feng Xiai came over in a hurry. My lady, are you okay? He just felt something strange around him, and came over quickly. Song Luo shook her head. I'm fine. Shi Hong caught a few birds and beasts. Feng Xiai looked around and took out the spiritual stone from the ring space. He input spiritual power, but there was no response. Feng Xiai was not surprised at all. He covered the birds and beasts with the spiritual domain and tried again. The spiritual stone quickly recovered the spiritual power fluctuations. Song Luhua was stunned for a moment, but soon reacted. No wonder the communication stone can't be used. It turns out that these little things are the cause. Feng Xiai smiled. Madam, your guess is right. This bird is a rare thousand-sound beast. It doesn't rely on its mouth. The sound stick on its back can block sounds that people can't hear. If it is within 1,000 miles, the communication stone will naturally be ineffective. It's not advisable to stay with this beast for too long, otherwise, it won't be long before you get a headache. Song Luhua pulled the feathers of Shihong beside her. This is what Shihong caught. How about throwing it out? This bird and beast looks cute. According to Feng Xiai, it is extremely rare and has little meat. Song Luhua has no desire to eat it. Madam, it's up to you. Song Luhua pinched Shihong's mouth. Did you hear me? Throw it out tomorrow. Throw it farther away, so as not to affect the Xuanling stone in the city. Chirp. Mistress. That's right. Song Luhua was satisfied. This guy would only be obedient if Feng Xiai was there. The next morning, Shihong took out 8,000 sound beasts, 1 big and 7 small. They came back in the afternoon, and when they came back, their claws were empty. Thousands of miles away, in the central region, a stream of light blue light slid past quickly. On a stone in the center of a wide river, several round thousand-sound beasts, 1 big and 7 small, were messy in the wind. With confused eyes, they looked at the vast river blankly. After a while, a vortex of spiritual power swept in. Several thousand-sound beasts hugged the stone wall tightly, chirping and screaming. After the spiritual power vortex passed, several of them huddled together with their hair in disarray, shaking constantly. One of the thousand-sound beasts wanted to fly away, but its wings were so bald that it flapped its wings. After flying for several days, it only flew half the distance and almost fell into the water. In the end, it could only fly back to the rock in the center. It chirped and spit at a certain place. Song Luhua didn't know what Shihong had done. When she woke up and didn't see the thousand-sound beast from yesterday, she took the Xuanling stone and tried it. It worked. That was enough. Shi Changsheng and others didn't notice that at this moment, he held his waist and walked into the mansion with a shaky step. A series of tribesmen followed behind him, who were also feeling dizzy. Everyone was talking and complaining. This is the first time I've seen such a spiritual weapon in my life. My wife always says I'm weak, and now my son is even weaker. What should I do when I go back? Isn't this a ready-made excuse? Shi Changsheng twitched his lips. He quickened his pace and walked into the mansion. I heard that this star-absorbing cauldron was made by Madame Song from the southern region. I thought she was just an ordinary lady from a large family, but I didn't expect that he underestimated her. Chapter 361. The next day, Shi Changsheng had just recovered some of his kidney energy when he was stuffed with a bunch of embroidery needles. Fu Jiao smiled. This is a spiritual weapon that I went through all the tribes to collect for you. It will be very convenient for the battle in the afternoon. Shi Changsheng took a look and found that it was indeed a spiritual weapon. Thank you, Brother Fu. Looking at Fu Jiao's back, Shi Changsheng was puzzled. Is he so kind? I always felt that there was something sinister and cunning in his smile. In the afternoon, after the star-sucking cauldron sucked up the surrounding Jisun jade, everyone began to clean up the strange beasts. At this time, Shi Changsheng saw that the tribesmen of each tribe began to use the embroidery needle spirit weapon to kill the beast. After moving smoothly, several people worked together and killed a high-level beast in just a moment. Hiss. The Shi clan members took a breath of cold air. So powerful. They fought with this level 8 beast, but many tribesmen died. No wonder the tribes arrived here so quickly. It turned out that they were assisted by these powerful spirit weapons. Even Shi Changsheng was surprised. Looking at the embroidery needle spirit weapon that Fu Jiao had just given him, his eyes shone. His fingers were a little itchy, and he had an urge to try it. He just took an embroidery needle, activated the spiritual weapon, and was about to learn from the martial spirit masters of other tribes to launch it. Suddenly, his hand stopped. He looked at the leaders of each tribe, but found that these young masters did not use this spiritual weapon. They only used spiritual swords to kill strange beasts. Or they stood aside and watched. Shi Changsheng kept a watchful eye. Shi Cheng, come and get the spiritual weapon. Yes. When Shi Cheng heard that his young master also had this embroidery needle spiritual weapon in his hand, he came over excitedly. He took the spiritual weapon from his young master and distributed it to the tribesmen. The use of this spiritual weapon is very simple. They imitated the tribesmen of other tribes, and soon found out the trick. The effect. Excellent. Very good. Once it is used, killing strange beasts, no matter how high or low, is as easy as cutting melons. The Shi clan members were very excited. This was a refreshing feeling they had never experienced before. In recent days, countless tribesmen have died under the claws of beasts. At this moment, the Shi clan members were bloodthirsty, and the depression that had been suppressed in their hearts for a long time poured out. When the sun sets, the layers of corpses of strange beasts show the results of today. Other families have long been accustomed to it, and everyone in the Shi family is happy. Someone reminded, "Don't be too happy too soon, look at the hand that just pinched the spiritual weapon." "What's wrong with the hand?" the Shi family asked in confusion, and then looked at the hand, and was horrified to find that the embroidery needle spiritual weapon had been taken off, but the fingers were still curled. "What's going on? Why is my hand out of control?" The tribesmen of various tribes came to join in the fun. "Don't worry, we are all the same. It will be fine after a while." "Look!" Someone raised his hand, and showed them a look. Hands with orchid fingers appeared in front of the Shi clan members. The Shi clan members looked at each other. Some lively ones hugged the neck of an Eastern region martial arts master. "Brother, what's going on? Can you tell me?" "Hey, it's not a secret. Do you know who made this spiritual weapon?" The Shi clan members shook their heads. "Oh, it's not a long time. It's not surprising that you don't know. This is a spiritual weapon made by Madame Song from the southern region." The Shi clan member exclaimed, "Is it Madame Song who made the star-absorbing cauldron?" "That's right. It's very common for spiritual weapons made by Madame Song to have various minor problems. In the future, you just get used to it." The Shi clan member who finally figured out the situation, Shi Chansheng twitched his lips. Fu Jiao was really insidious. Looking at a group of martial spirit masters with orchid fingers, he couldn't imagine how embarrassing it would be if such a situation happened to him. No wonder these people don't need it. Compared with cunning, he can't even flatter her. At the same time, Shi Chansheng was very curious about this Madame Song. That night, after returning, the Shi clan's spiritual assistant found Shi Chansheng. "Young master, do you know that Madame Song from the southern region?" A group of people's eyes lit up, and they talked endlessly about what they saw and heard when they communicated with the spiritual assistants of the same clan today. Today, they really opened their eyes. The focus of each clan's refining of weapons and medicine has undergone earth-shaking changes. There are countless rare spiritual tools and elixirs refined. I heard that this method of refining tools and elixirs was created by the wife of the patriarch of the Feng family in the southern region, Mrs. Song. The effect is exceptionally good. They are all auxiliary spiritual masters, so they still have good eyesight. I have an inexplicable premonition in my heart that the situation of auxiliary spiritual masters will change dramatically in the future. This is an opportunity. All the clans in the 4 regions have joined, so it makes no sense for their Shi clan to be excluded. So they came to find their own young master. Since the death of the Lord of the Mansion, the Tianshu Mansion has been governed by the young Lord of the Mansion. We want to learn how to refine weapons and medicine from her. Please help us." After listening to the ideas of the clan members, Shi Chansheng knocked on the table and thought for a moment. "I know." From the clan members, they could hear that this Madame Song now has a high status and importance among the auxiliary spiritual masters of the 4 regions. Combined with a powerful spiritual weapon before, Shi Chansheng naturally has his own ideas. First of all, the auxiliary spiritual masters of the clan must learn this new method. Secondly, according to her current level of power, it would be beneficial to have a relationship with her. At this moment, the sunset in the sky was about to set. Shi Chansheng made some preparations, and went out. Song Luwan naturally couldn't miss him. Once the auxiliary spirit masters perfected the methods of refining weapons and medicine, and completed the transformation, the situation between auxiliary spirit masters and martial spirit masters, between various races and domains, will change. Although the pattern between auxiliary spirit masters and martial spirit masters will be tilted, it will soon return to balance. It is best not to break the balance between the various domains, especially the major families, easily. When Shi Chansheng made his intention clear, Song Luhua readily agreed. Like Fu Jiao and others, she did not accept the promise of the Shi family. She did not need such things. Next, under the guidance of Song Luhua, the members of the Shi family became the testers of medicine and tools for the auxiliary spiritual masters in their clan. The Shi family members were miserable. Some even looked at Shi Chansheng, looking like they were about to cry. It is said that men do not shed tears easily. This Shi family martial spiritual master only took a dose of kidney tonifying spiritual medicine, and his kidney energy was restored, but it was short. It was a true way of learning from each other's strengths and making up for each other's weaknesses. Although it was only a little short, it left an indelible shadow on his heart. When Shi Changsheng heard this, he almost choked to death. Thank you for your hard work. The pharmacist who made the kidney tonifying elixir was a young girl. When she heard that the incident had reached the Sheophagen, she hurried to explain in person, "Why are you so worried about such a short-term problem? Just wait for 3 to 5 years, and I guarantee that you will recover as before." Shi clan members. Shi Changsheng. Collective silence. This matter spread quickly, and all the clans in the 4 regions knew about it. Song Yuan only felt a chill between his legs. I suddenly found that my little sister is still reliable. Bo Shan and others nodded with sympathy. When Song Luhua heard it, her eyes lit up. Talent. The Shi clan actually produced a talent. The angle is tricky enough. This time, among the 7 prefectures in the East region, the Shi clan suffered the most losses. Now, with this talent, it must not be difficult for the Shi clan to recover. However, before that, I am afraid that the martial arts masters of the Shi clan will suffer. For example, this unlucky martial arts master who was short. Chapter 362. Oh no, it's them. Hurry up and leave. A group of green furry little beasts appeared in the sight of everyone not far away. Shi Changsheng's face suddenly changed, and he quickly reminded everyone to leave. After hearing the reminder, Feng Xiai and others did not hesitate at all and immediately ordered to evacuate. However, at this moment, it was too late. These green beasts that caused the Shi family to change their faces were seen, rushing in groups at a fast speed. When the distance was closer, they raised their necks and cried. "Ah!" A sharp sound rang out in the forest, piercing and loud. It seemed to pierce everyone's periostem. "Ah, headache. My head hurts. It hurts. It hurts." Many martial arts masters covered their ears in pain, shouting with distorted faces. Even Feng Xiai had a terrible headache. He forced himself to start the flying boat, and the tribesmen stumbled up. The elders of each tribe took action together, and barely dealt with the strange beasts rushing in front. Fortunately, everyone got on the flying boat at this time. The second elder and the others immediately stopped and jumped onto the nearest flying boat before the green beast jumped up. Feng Xiai endured the headache and threw out the top-grade small spirit sword, piercing the ear of a green beast. It made it scream even more. The sound made his face turn blue. Feng Xi's face was forbearing, and he gathered the power in his palm. The top-grade small spirit sword swung and took a green beast that was screaming. He neatly sealed its mouth. When the flying boat took off, flew high and far, the harsh sound finally stopped. But at this moment, many of the tribesmen were bleeding from all 7 orifices, sweating profusely, and sitting on the deck gasping for breath. The group quickly retreated 30 miles away. Shi Changsheng then told the situation of the soundless beast. "You don't know, my tribe has encountered this beast once, and it was this seemingly insignificant little beast that caused my tribe to suffer heavy losses." After experiencing the scene just now, everyone believed that these blue beasts had such abilities, and just listened quietly. He smiled bitterly and continued. "The sound of that strange beast can make people bleed from all 7 orifices, and burst blood vessels and die. Fortunately, they reacted quickly, otherwise, countless martial spirit masters would have died here. Many martial spirit masters in the clan are troubled by the problems left over from that time. The number of strange beasts today is 100 times that of that time. I'm afraid it will be difficult to deal with." Shi Changsheng smiled bitterly. In the end, everyone decided to retreat first. If we want to continue moving forward, we need to find a way to restrain these strange beasts. Tianshu Mansion, the temporary residence of the Feng family. Song Luhua walked in the courtyard with a green beast that was not much bigger than the rabbit beast, and had its mouth sealed. "From what you said, this is a beast." Feng Xiai nodded. "This beast attacks people with sound, so it is reasonable to call it a beast. How to restrain it? This is a common problem for everyone. If you seal the mouth, you have to wait until you catch it before you can seal it. Before that, these were all empty words." This entanglement lasted for 2 days. During this period, the spiritual plant masters from the 7 prefectures in the East region came to visit. "Madam Song, we heard that you have a magical golden lotus seed in your hand. We want to exchange some with you. Can we?" Song Luhua looked at the spiritual plant masters of various tribes in the East region in surprise. "What do you want the golden lotus seeds for?" Everyone sighed. Yesterday, the news sent back by the tribesmen sent by the prefecture city to various places to support the branches was not good. The main city has a strong financial foundation, but it still suffered heavy losses. The situation in the branch cities is even more serious. Moreover, there are still many branch cities that may not be able to wait for their rescue. As a result, they had expected it. It was just that when the matter was laid out in the open, it was still a little hard to accept. They needed people in the East region. They needed many people to refill the human race's cities. Using the Golden Lotus seeds was also a last resort strategy. Song Luhua was silent after hearing this. You can get the Golden Lotus seeds. I make it clear in advance that I don't have much antidote. If there is any problem, I will be responsible for it myself. Thank you, Madam Song. Everyone was grateful, and took out the things they had prepared in advance and presented them. Song Luhua collected them all. Anyway, they could be used to refine spiritual tools and elixirs to benefit everyone. Song Luhua collected a bunch of spiritual plants or medicinal materials and piled them in the yard. Mammy Yang helped to sort them out. When a box was opened, a strong smell escaped. She was almost suffocated by the smell. Ah! Mammy Yang quickly covered the box, covered her nose, and stepped back a few steps, pointing at the box on the ground. Her throat was so hoarse that she couldn't speak. Song Luhua smelled a little bit, covered her chest, and almost vomited. Mammy! She shouted. Her hoarse voice made it difficult for her to speak, and she almost rolled her eyes. Chapter 363. I know what to do. Feng Shi, send people to ask the tribes. I want this thing, the more the better. Song Luhua covered her sore throat, and showed Feng Shi the contents of the box. Feng Shi opened the box, and was choked by a strong smell. The smell was neither stinky nor smelly, weird and disgusting. Yes, he responded hoarsely, quickly closed the lid and left. An hour later, Feng Shi came back. Madam, the things you want are ready. He handed over the big box in his hand. I don't know what kind of medicine this thing is, but fortunately, the spiritual assistants of all tribes in the East region are not unfamiliar with it. When they heard that it was what their wife wanted, they helped to collect it very diligently and found some. Song Luhua waved her hand, put it into the space of the jade bracelet, and nodded to him. Very good, you go down first. After saying that, she turned her head and went into the refining room. This thing is fecal essence, which is obtained by a kind of insect beast, the fecal essence beast, collecting the excrement of various exotic beasts, rolling it, and refining the essence. It smells like stench, but not really. It is poisonous and disliked by all races. On the continent, all the beasts, big or small, are despised and abandoned. Even the larger and stronger beasts would not step on them to avoid being contaminated by the filthy smell. The human race is no exception, but since someone discovered that feces essence also has medicinal value, they have repeatedly seized the feces essence that they worked hard to roll. It is used as medicine. However, feces essence with a long history is hard to come by, but fortunately Feng Shi went to various races in the East region and collected a wooden box. After making some preparations, he covered his mouth and nose tightly, and then quickly poured half a box of fecal essence into the refining cauldron. Song Luhua squinted his eyes, took a quick look, and nodded with satisfaction. The quality and age are not bad, it should be enough. Half an hour later, the spiritual fire went out. Song Luhua did not open the refining cauldron, but covered his mouth and nose tightly, and called Feng Xi over. What do you want to see me for, my lady? Feng Xi smelled a faint scent as he stepped into the threshold. He looked up and saw his wife was fully armed and kept a distance. He reacted quickly, held his breath, took out a handkerchief, and covered his mouth and nose. Song Luhua smiled. Feng Xi, you're really quick. She pointed to the cauldron in the middle of the room. You can use the pills in the cauldron. I made them specifically for the beast. Throw the pills over when you see them. I guarantee they won't be able to open their mouths. By the way, after distributing the pills, remember to clean the cauldron before giving it to me. Feng Xi saw his wife's expression of wanting to escape so eagerly that he thought it would be better not to get involved with the pills. He nodded. Thank you, my lady. He did not open the lid of the cauldron, but waved his hand and put the entire cauldron into the space ring. Outer courtyard. Feng Shi told everyone about the request for medicine for the clan leader's wife today. Feng Shan was curious. The medicine that our wife asked for personally must be extraordinary. Could it be that she wants to make a life-saving pill? Song Yuan shook his head. I don't know if it can save lives, but it will definitely not poison people to death. Feng Shi, This sounded a bit strange, but he couldn't tell what was strange. Feng Xi passed through the archway and happened to hear these words. He couldn't help but curl his lips. He threw out the Lian Ding and the elixir together. Everyone froze for a moment when they saw the familiar Lian Ding, but soon returned to normal. Only Feng Xi had a strange look on his face. He had a very bad premonition. When he thought of the spiritual medicine he had collected for the wife of the clan leader not long ago, the smell. It didn't look good at all. Chapter 364. Ugh. Run, run! I went out today and met a group of beasts again. The pale green fur and petite body were the strange beasts that gave me headaches last time. My little sister named it the beast. This elixir was specially made by her to deal with the beast. He still can't forget the moment when the lid of the cauldron was opened. The smell filled the yard and almost made them faint. I just accidentally took a sip and my throat hurt all night, and it was difficult to speak and drink water. Just now, when that thing was running towards them, they just threw it like that and it exploded. Yes, it exploded. The smoke covered the entire area of 10 miles, and the smell of the elixir reached its peak. Although they were prepared and held their breath in advance, the smoke entered through their nostrils and choked them so much that they could not open their mouths soon. Feng Xiai and Qin Yi were fully prepared, and now they also felt an itchy throat. Even people couldn't stand it, let alone this medicine was specially made for strange beasts. When the elixir was thrown in, there were still strange beasts making noises, and then only hoarse noises could be heard. At this moment, how could they still hear their cries? Everyone covered their throats in joy, but seeing that the scene was still thick with fog, they hesitated for a while and went forward. They quickly harvested their lives. They acted quickly, and when they retreated, their throats felt like they had swallowed a knife, and they couldn't say anything. So, it was getting late, so they went home. Along the way, there was silence and the atmosphere was quiet. Fo Shan and Song Yuan, who were always talkative, also fell silent. Fo Shan covered his throat and rolled his eyes with difficulty. It's not that he doesn't want to talk, but now that he's in this state, he has to speak. Jiang Wenxiu wanted to nag a few words, but as soon as he opened his mouth, the wind entered his throat, and it hurt so much that it couldn't be any more. He managed to squeeze out a few words, but his voice was so rough that it was even more unpleasant than a duck's quack. Not only was it unpleasant, but the voice was also so small that few people could hear it except himself, so he had to give up. When he returned to the city, he saw Song Luhua and turned his head away proudly. Song Luhua didn't bother to pay attention to him and ran to Feng Xiai attentively. You're back so early today? Feng Xiai smiled but said nothing. Lan Shi, Bailey Zhu, Yang Lingkong, Fu Jiao, and others passed by, all smiled and nodded, and then hurried away. When they returned to their residence, Feng Xiai pointed to her throat and tapped her forehead lightly. Song Luhua reacted and smiled. Feng Xiai, you won't be tricked too. No wonder her son didn't speak at this time. She could imagine how strange and unpleasant the tone of Feng Xi's voice would be when he opened his mouth. Feng Xiai pinched the soft flesh on her face and patted her head helplessly. He is also an ordinary person. How could he escape this time when the elixir made by his wife is so powerful? Tonight is destined to be restless. Feng Ning, the alchemist of the Feng family, took out a few porcelain bottles and handed them to Feng Shan and others. I heard that you have a hoarse voice. This is the elixir we made for you. It is guaranteed to be useful. Feng Shan was very hesitant and took the porcelain bottle slowly, refusing to eat it. During this period, they were not only deceived by the wife of their family head, but also by the weapon refiners and alchemists in the family. Thinking of the previous experience of being cheated, the porcelain bottle in his hand seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. He just smiled stiffly at Feng Ning and waved his hand to signal her to leave. Feng Xiai was 1 generation older than Feng Shan, and in terms of kinship, she was still Feng Shan's distant aunt. Seeing that this distant nephew refused to eat, Feng Ning said with a stern face, "Your mother asked me to take care of you before she left. Since you are so unwilling to listen, I will go back and tell your mother that I will not take care of you in the future." Feng Shan's face was bitter, and he used this trick again. Some time ago, it was this distant aunt who cheated him the most. There were all kinds of pills for kidney tonic, bone strengthening, sour, spicy, diarrhea, nose swelling, all kinds of weird pills. Could the pills he took out now be good stuff? Ah. Feng Shan gestured with his hands, indicating that he should eat later. Feng Ning, I don't understand what you want to say. You can't talk here, it's a waste of time. Take the medicine quickly, the sooner you take it, the better. The Feng clan members, who were swept by his peripheral vision, quickly turned their heads to the side, shrugged their shoulders and laughed. Feng Ning snorted lightly. A bunch of brats, the whole family is related, they are all elders, and they can't cure you. Chapter 365. I don't know what's going on outside. Somewhere in the central region. A group of old men with white hair and youthful faces are constantly consuming spiritual power to build a spiritual domain, trying to control the explosion of the huge spiritual power vortex in the center. They are all super 9th level martial spirit masters. There is an unwritten invisible rule in the 10 Winds continent that once you break through the 9th level, you are eligible to come to the inner circle of the central region. In the past, most of the super 9th level masters from the major families in the 4 regions gathered here to suppress the explosion of spiritual power. Therefore, the continent has been relatively stable in recent years. Last year, a spiritual vortex appeared as in previous years. At first, they didn't care, because it happened every year, and they could calm it down with a little suppression. Unexpectedly, last year's spiritual vortex was so powerful that it stirred the veins of the central region, causing the extreme hard jade in the veins of the central region to flow to the 4 regions. Because this spiritual vortex was close to the east region, it was the first to suffer. The other 3 regions should be able to hold out for a while, but the east region is probably in trouble. Talking about the situation outside, a group of super 9th level masters looked bitter. Especially the various super 9th level masters from the east region shook their heads repeatedly. Life? This is all life. It's not that they don't want to take action. In this situation, even if they go out, they can't save many people. The only thing they can do now is to suppress this huge spiritual power vortex, and buy time for the human race in other regions. We old guys have done everything we can. Whether the human race can escape this crisis depends on their luck. Tianshu Mansion. The second elder stared at a certain place, as if he had some feelings. Since the last breakthrough to the 9th level, the world seemed to have changed in their eyes. A few days ago, he had just broken through to the 9th level, his realm was unstable, and he was busy cleaning up the strange beasts. He could only sense a faint breath, and could not understand it. Today, he finally understood something in his heart. Now, the area around Tianshu Mansion has been almost cleared. With the help of Song Luhua and the spiritual weapons provided by the weapon refiners of each tribe, the various tribes in the east region have been able to take a short break. Everyone began to make arrangements to explore the central region. Even in normal times, the central region is extremely dangerous, let alone at this time. This time, Feng Xiai did not plan to bring too many people. As soon as the number of people was finalized, the second elder came. He looked serious. Don't go to the central region to investigate. That's not the place you should go. He sensed an extremely domineering spiritual power from the central region. It was an extremely terrifying spiritual power that could tear people apart. He had a strong premonition in his heart that if a martial spirit master below the 9th level stepped into it at this moment, it would be doomed. In the past, with the current cultivation of Feng Xiai and others, it would not be a big problem to just walk around the periphery of the central region. But at this moment, we must not take risks. Feng Xiai believed that the second elder would not do anything without a purpose. He pondered and said, "Have you discovered anything?" According to the ancient books he had read, after a martial spirit master broke through the 9th level, he could perceive the changes in the world. Especially the huge changes. It can be basically confirmed that there was a problem in the central region in the east region. Exploring the central region was a plan they had made long ago. Judging from the second elder's expression today, he has discovered something after all. Feng Xiai is not the kind of stubborn person who would go to the mountain of tigers even though he knows there are tigers there. However, everything originated from the central region. If the source cannot be figured out and solved, the entire continent will fall into disaster. Everyone understands this truth, and the second elder naturally understands it. He slowed down and said slowly, "You guys should stay put for now, and wait for us old guys to investigate first." This time, Feng Xiai did not refute, and he could not refute. The super 9th level martial spirit masters of the major families in the 4 regions are extremely rare, and they barely gathered a team of 50 people. Most of them are elders of various families, who have advanced in the past 1 or 2 years. On the day of departure, Song Luhua threw Shiheng over. "This bird is a little human-like and fast. Tell it to follow. If there is any situation, you can come back and report in time. The central region is far away, and the communication range of the communication spirit stone cannot be covered. There are too many uncertain factors outside. If you encounter a strange beast like the 1,000-sound bird that affects communication, it will be troublesome." Song Luhua told Shiheng, "I know your uncle Shiheng has great magical powers and birds are smart. I need your help to pass the message when the time comes." As she said that, she filled Shiheng's space ring with a lot of gray jade beads. Sure. Having lived with people of different tribes for so long, Shiheng has already become familiar with humans. After hearing the mistress's instructions, She just pecked at the feathers with her mouth proudly, and walked slowly to the side of the second elder. As the saying goes, a poor family can become rich on the road, and the major families took out all kinds of elixirs and spiritual tools they had prepared. Song Luhua was no exception, and took out a bunch of colorful pet rings and handed them to the second elder. Here are the things that the clan has prepared for you: clothes, food, elixirs, spiritual tools, all ready. The second elder saw this bunch of colorful space rings, and then compared it with the single, gray rings received by other masters, and felt quite relieved. Thank you, Feng Xi's daughter-in-law. The masters of other families couldn't help but feel jealous, and suddenly felt that the storage rings in their hands were not good enough. Originally, with their current realm, they didn't care much about this level of space ring. But there is no harm without comparison. The Feng family is worthy of being the family that produced the first auxiliary spiritual master on the continent, and even their space rings are more magnificent and shining than those of other families. Everyone was worried, and the second elder and his party set off without hesitation. The difficulties of this trip can be predicted, but fortunately, before leaving, they gave the star-absorbing cauldron to the second elder and others. Thinking of this, everyone felt a little more at ease. Chapter 366. After the second elder and others left, Feng Xi and others continued to clean up the surrounding strange beasts. Now, without the star-absorbing cauldron, even with the help of other spiritual tools refined by Song Luhua, the difficulty of killing high-level strange beasts has increased exponentially. Everyone's body is not so weak, but they have to come back every day with injuries. Feng Shan licked the bloody saliva from the corner of his lips. I'm crazy. I actually missed the time when I was weak in the kidneys. Song Yuan, Is it possible that he also misses it? Since the star-absorbing cauldron is gone, high-level monsters are much harder to kill. He hasn't been so embarrassed for a long time. Several teams joined forces to besiege an 8th-level monster, and it took them half an hour to take it down. According to the current progress, it is unknown when the dilemma of the East region can be solved. Feng Xi took the opportunity to kill a sneak-attacking monster, hoping that everything will go well for the second elder and the others. Why do I feel that the more monsters I kill, the more I don't know when I can kill them all? Everyone muttered a few words, feeling a little strange. They clearly remembered that there were only 300 or 400 strange beasts here in the morning, but with so many people besieging until now, the number of strange beasts seems to have not decreased at all. I always feel that something is not right, but I don't know what is wrong. Feng Xi raised his eyes, and frowned at the strange beasts that seemed to be endless. He discovered this situation early in the morning. After observing secretly for a long time, he finally found some clues. These strange beasts would roar at them for a while every once in a while. But the beasts behind never came forward to fight. It was really unreasonable. He pondered for a moment and said to everyone, "Cover me, I will try to pick a beast behind." Yes. Feng Qing, Feng Yi and others were very alert, and quickly formed a formation from the left and right to launch an attack. Song Yuan and Feng Shan led the team to attack from the front, trying to tear a hole in the beast group. Qin Yi and others saw Feng Xi's intention, and sent people to support him. In just a quarter of an hour, Feng Xi found an opportunity. He leaped forward nimbly, the top-grade spiritual sword in his hand filled with spiritual power, and tried his best to shoot at the strange beasts that had never come forward. Then, he quickly retreated and withdrew from the group of strange beasts. Everything went incredibly smoothly. Feng Xi stared at the strange beast hit by his spiritual sword, and saw that the top-grade spiritual sword with a murderous aura easily penetrated the body of the strange beast and stabbed into the ground behind it. And the strange beast that was pierced turned into clouds and smoke in an instant and disappeared. It's like this. This scene stunned everyone. There's a problem here. Get rid of the normal beasts first. Qin Yi and the others had an idea in mind, and Feng Xi was thoughtful. If he guessed correctly, he could get something good today. Tianshu Mansion, the temporary residence of the Feng family. Without the star-absorbing cauldron, Song Luhua has been a little more active in refining tools and medicines these days. Unfortunately, for half a month, the spiritual tools and pills refined were very ordinary, and there was no one comparable to the star-absorbing cauldron. Song Luhua sighed, even if you want to refine good things, you must have good materials. No matter how you look at it, the materials in her hands are too ordinary. She missed Shihong very much. When that guy was around, although he was a little bit short-sighted, he would take the furnace and the cute cow out to grab good things from time to time. Most of them went into her pocket. Now, there is no way to let it take her out to find some good things. If there are good refining materials, Even if it can't refine a spiritual weapon comparable to the star-absorbing cauldron, it will be several times better than what is currently refined. She had this feeling for no reason. Chapter 367. In the evening, the night fell. Fluorescent stones were lit in each courtyard, and the white light illuminated the courtyard as bright as day. At that time, Song Luo saw the flying boat team passing over the Tianshu mansion. Feng Xiai and his friends finally came back. Sure enough, it didn't take long for the outer courtyard to become lively. Everyone excitedly discussed what they saw and heard today, and Song Luo vaguely heard the loud voices of her eldest brother, and Feng Shan and others. The hanging heart was finally relieved. Feng Xiai strode across the courtyard gate, and saw a petite figure leaning against the pillar at a glance. The night was like a weave, and the light and shadow were like water, shining on the small body, like a flower reflecting on the water, gentle and quiet. A soft color flashed in Feng Xi's eyes. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he walked over briskly. "My wife, I'm back." Under her feet, Lu Zi squatted on the surface of her shoes and snored. Song Luo teased him with her feet, and smiled at him. "It's a little late today." Feng Xiai helped her tidy up her hair that was messed up by the evening breeze. "I encountered some strange things today." After briefly describing what happened today, he waved his hand, and a wooden box appeared in front of Song Luo. Feng Xiai opened the wooden box, took out a piece, and handed it over. "This is the culprit of the strange things we encountered today. My lady, please take a look. It may be useful." He knew that his wife was worried about not having good refining materials recently. The things in this box were the special things found after solving the strange beasts today. Song Luo became interested and opened the box. The light red jade with clear texture came into view. Her white and round fingertips passed by, and a unique cool feeling of jade lingered on her fingertips. Song Luo's eyes flashed with surprise. "Illusion stone? It's actually the illusion stone." It is said that the illusion stone can record the images of everything in the world. She has read various orthodox and unorthodox books and pamphlets, and only saw a few words in a book of strange stones. "I didn't expect to see it today." Song Luo's eyes lit up. "This is a good thing." She squatted down and searched in the wooden box. The illusion stones of different sizes were of very good quality, and some of them were even of the best quality. "You've come just in time." She was thinking about refining a slightly better spiritual weapon, and now these phantom stones are just right for her to show her skills. Let's go to dinner. I want to go to bed early today, and get up early tomorrow to refine weapons." With her current cultivation and realm, if she wants to refine a good spiritual weapon or elixir, it will take a long time for one cauldron, which consumes a lot of physical and spiritual energy. Song Luo collected the phantom stones in a few seconds and urged Feng Xiai to have dinner. The next morning, she really got up early, sat on the bed with a messy hair, yawning one after another. Feng Xiai quickly adjusted the jade belt around his waist, and said with a smile, "Madam, you are very diligent today." Song Luo rubbed her eyes, and became more awake. Hearing this, she rolled her eyes at him and said, "I am always diligent." Feng Xiai smiled, put on his clothes, and patted her messy hair. "Madam, you are right." Song Luo ignored him, and hesitated for a long time, but finally got up. Madame Yang had already prepared breakfast. Today, the couple rarely had breakfast together. After the meal, Feng Xiai and his group left the city. Song Luo also entered the refining room. She took out the refining cauldron and the phantom stone, but she didn't know what spiritual weapon to refine. She sat cross-legged on the floor, thinking hard for a long time, and suddenly her eyes lit up. "I have an idea. Hey!" Chapter 368. After 2 failed attempts, Song Luo started the third one. After some random additions, Jisun jade, 7 changes stone. She actually found that after adding these 2, the materials in the refining cauldron were close to balance. Both of them were excellent. Song Luo was looking forward to it. "I wonder what I can refine this time." This wait lasted until the end of the afternoon. During this period, she did not rest, and did not even have time to eat lunch. Madame Yang had been around the door of the refining room several times, but she did not see her leave, so she was a little worried. She still remembered the last time when the wife of her family had fainted in the refining room while refining weapons. But she was afraid that if she disturbed him rashly, it would ruin the situation. This morning, she specifically told herself not to disturb him. Nani Yang was anxiously turning around at the door. Squeak! Suddenly, the door opened. Song Luo came out with a pale face. Nani Yang finally let go of the worry in front of her. "Madam, you finally came out. I will help you back to your room, have some food first, and then rest." Although Song Luhua was weak, her eyes were bright at this moment. After being helped to the room by Madame Yang, she ate some food and lay on the bed, but she couldn't fall asleep. When she thought of what she had just refined, she couldn't help but smile. After tossing and turning for a long time, the mental excitement was finally overwhelmed by the physical fatigue, and she fell asleep hugging the quilt. When she woke up again, it was already dusk. The tribes that went out to clean up the strange beasts also returned. During the day, the slightly cold courtyard suddenly became lively. Song Luhua couldn't wait to take out the good things she had refined in the afternoon and looked at them repeatedly. A jade book appeared in her fair hands, and the transparent green color was particularly fresh under the setting sun. The surface of the open book page was flickering, and a trace of golden lines were wandering in the book. She gave it a name called the Book of Initiation. In terms of grade, it may be lower than the star-absorbing cauldron, but it is definitely useful. If it is to be used normally, Feng Xiai and others may have to provide something first. Song Luhua was looking forward to Feng Xiai and others appearing. Speak of the devil is here. She saw her eldest brother with messy hair and a messy body, walking side by side with Feng Xiai, saying something in a loud voice. Feng Xiai listened, occasionally smiling and nodding. Song Luhua ran over. Brother, Feng Xiai, you're back. Hurry up, do me a favor. Then he pulled Feng Xiai and walked towards the inner courtyard. As for her brother, he didn't have as much knowledge in his head as she did, so it was useless to look for him. That's right, this initiation book needs a lot of knowledge before use. The more knowledge, the greater the power. Feng Xiai never put down the book every day, and he has a photographic memory. He has read countless books, so he will go first and enrich the book. Song Luhua told Feng Xiai how to use the initiation book. So, input all the knowledge in your head into it. The more the better. Feng Xiai took the emerald green book curiously, and read it again and again. The spiritual tools refined by my wife are becoming more and more interesting. I will give it a try. As he said this, he input spiritual power into it, and closed his eyes. It is strange that the knowledge in his head was like a passing glance, and even the enlightenment books he read in his childhood were presented in front of him. Lines of characters passed by in front of his eyes, as if alive. The couple stood in the courtyard for an hour. Song Luhua looked at Feng Xiai with his eyes closed and sighed. I don't know how many books he has read, and he hasn't finished recording them after so long. After more than an hour, Feng Xiai slowly opened his eyes. He rubbed his stinging temples, and looked at the heavenly book with complicated eyes. He didn't expect that this thing was so strange that it could really include all the books he had read and the knowledge he had learned. Song Luhua was particularly happy to see him wake up. I try it too. With Feng Xiai watching her, nothing should go wrong. After seeing Feng Xi's situation, she decided to move a chair and sit down to try. She didn't want to stand stupidly in the yard for several hours. After Song Luhua finished speaking, she started holding the heavenly book without waiting for Feng Xi's reaction. Feng Xiai also moved a chair and sat next to his wife, ready to wait for a long time. However, a quarter of an hour later, Song Luhua opened her eyes with a splitting headache. It hurts, my head hurts. Endless knowledge entered her mind in a despicable way. Her mind was now a mess, and she was going to be stupid. She vaguely remembered that she seemed to be doing calculus math problems just now. The symbols that she couldn't even remember were all coming at her. Just after it was over, a bunch of foreign symbols came floating in, making her head hurt. God knows, she had graduated for so many years, and she had already returned these things to the teacher. Then, a bunch of knowledge about the Ten Wind continent that she had never seen before attacked her brain. Now, her eyes were filled with all kinds of words and symbols. Then, she only remembered that she vomited, and then her eyes went black. Wife, what's wrong with you? Feng Xiai saw his wife wake up, stood up with a confused look on her face, staggered a few steps, turned around a few times, vomited a lot, and fell straight backwards. He quickly caught her, and called out anxiously. Chapter 369. Hiss, dizzy. Song Luhua opened her eyes. It was already the next morning. She sat up from the bed. Her temples still hurt, and there were stars in her eyes. Everywhere she looked, there were words and shadows of various symbols. I was careless. She couldn't help but have a headache. If she had known, she shouldn't have touched the book. Her head was empty, and she didn't record much, but it actually gave her a lot of knowledge. These were all Feng Xi's knowledge. Madame Yang was sitting on a round table next to her sewing and mending. When she heard the noise, she hurried over to check. Madam, are you awake? Yes. Madame Yang saw that she looked gloomy and was a little worried. Do you want to ask an alchemist to take a look? Song Luo waved her hand. No need, I know about some minor problems. She insisted, and Madame Yang did not mention it again. Are you hungry? I bring the food. The food was simmering in the kitchen, and could be eaten as soon as it was brought. After she said that, Song Luo really felt that her stomach was empty. Yes, she didn't even have time to eat dinner yesterday, and she was confused by the knowledge in her head, and her stomach happened to growl. Nani Yang was quick and nimble. She quickly prepared the food and served a bowl of soup in front of her. This is the nourishing soup I cooked overnight. Please try it. After a simple breakfast, Song Luo fell asleep again. She probably needs to stay in bed for 2 days because of her dizziness. Luckily, she only opened the initiation book after Feng Xi had used it. Otherwise, if she added the knowledge of the people from all 4 regions, she would have a headache for a long time. Speaking of this, Song Luo remembered that the initiation book could not be used yet. When Qin Yi and others return tonight, we need to ask them to try. If we talk about the knowledge of the tribes in the 4 regions, the young masters of each tribe know more. The tribes have been educated since childhood, covering all aspects. The family collections and books exchanged between tribes are much more than ordinary people. Song Luo suddenly felt that her headache was not so painful. The book is indeed a good spiritual tool. She really couldn't bear to see everyone die every day before coming back, so it seems that she should improve the book as soon as possible so that they can use it. In the evening, the tribes returned. Feng Xi was relieved to see that she looked normal. She fainted yesterday. I'm afraid it was caused by the spiritual weapon. After waiting for a while, Song Luo sent someone to invite the 4 regions to come. Jiang Wenxiu was very surprised when he heard it. But you ever find a new spiritual weapon? Since the star-absorbing cauldron was gone, it was particularly troublesome for them to clean up the strange beasts. Not only was the speed much slower, but the tribesmen were often injured. They were invited to come today. I think they got something good. This point, whether it is Jiang Wenxiu or the various domains and tribes, after this period of time, they have also thought of it. So, they hurriedly changed their clothes and came. The group was particularly interested. Feng Xi stood beside his wife, and he knew what she was thinking. Thinking of the new spiritual weapon he used yesterday, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Jiang Wenxiu asked at the right time, saving her from speaking. Song Luo smiled. It seems that Master Jiang still understands me. You are right. I got the Phantom Stone a few days ago, and I worked day and night to refine a good thing. I guarantee that you will get twice the result with half the effort when hunting in the future. That's great. Everyone was quite interested. Song Luo glanced at everyone and said with a smile, although it is a good thing, this spiritual weapon needs your help before it can play an extraordinary effect. How? Jiang Wenxiu choked and quickly stopped talking. Qin Yi, Yang Lingkong, Bailey Zhu, Fu Jiao and others suddenly felt a chill on their backs, and they always felt that something was wrong, and they all looked at Feng Xi. Feng Xi brushed his sleeves, smiled, lowered his head and said nothing. Chapter 370. Song Luo took out a green book-shaped spiritual tool and showed it to everyone. This is a heavenly book. You need to infuse your lifelong learning into it before it can exert its effectiveness. How to infuse? Qin Yi took it and looked at it curiously. Soon he found its extraordinary features. Looking closely, the heavenly book was flickering with a special aura, simple and mysterious, as if there were countless secrets that were difficult to see through. If Song Luo knew what he was thinking, she would definitely tell him that this was the power of knowledge. It's very simple, just start it. Feng Xi has already poured all the knowledge in his brain into it, and now it's up to you. Song Luo glanced at everyone. Who will go first? How about Jiang Xiao, the clan leader, go first? She deliberately frightened him. Jiang Wenxiu was really frightened, and waved his hands repeatedly, pushing Yunju behind him out. Yunju first. Yunju glared at him after being pushed out suddenly. Jiang Wenxiu smiled. Tell me how you feel when the time comes. Yunju raised his fist towards him and smiled at Song Luo. Madame Song, I give it a try first. Song Luo nodded, and Qin Yi handed the heavenly book in his hand to Yunju. After receiving the heavenly book, Yunju took a deep breath and poured spiritual power into it. While pouring spiritual power, the knowledge in his mind flowed out, like a passing glance, all of which were displayed in front of him. He had never noticed the huge amount. At this moment, all the skills he had learned in his life were poured out. Time passed, and he was unaware of it. I don't know how long it took, but I felt a throbbing pain in my temple. Before he could breathe a sigh of relief, suddenly, A huge and complex knowledge came like a surging flood. He recognized a small part. A large part looked familiar, and a small piece of extremely special, mysterious symbols that he couldn't understand at all came rushing in. Yuanju suddenly felt stars in his eyes. His mind was confused, and his brain hurt like a needle. Jiang Wenxiu and others saw him holding the heavenly book in his palm and closing his eyes. After a while, fine beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, and his expression suddenly twisted, thinking that this heavenly book was indeed not without price. His eyes turned to Feng Xiai and his wife, and seeing their playful expressions, he secretly thought that Feng Xiai was indeed insidious. After a while, Yuanju silently opened his eyes. Facing a pair of curious eyes, he endured the stabbing pain in his head, quickly adjusted his facial expression, and pretended to be nonchalant, and stuffed the heavenly book into Jiang Wenxiu's hands. Everyone asked him curiously, "How is it? Is it uncomfortable?" Yuanju straightened his back and said lightly, "Nothing, but I rack my brains to record the knowledge in my mind, which wasted some effort." "Is it really that simple?" Jiang Wenxiu didn't quite believe it, but the heavenly book had already aroused his curiosity. "Let me give it a try." He rolled up his sleeves and did it according to Yuanju's method. After 2/4 of an hour, Jiang Wenxiu opened his eyes, was stunned for a moment, quickly adjusted his expression, and stuffed the heavenly book into Qin Ye's hands. Yuanju is right. He pretended to be calm on the surface, but in fact he was yelling in his heart and scolding Yuanju. When he had time, he would definitely fight with this guy. This was not just a little bit of effort. He just felt that his brain was forced to be stuffed with a bunch of messy things, and he felt sick and wanted to vomit. Song Luhua felt that these two people were immoral, and they would force the knowledge that had been recorded back, without mentioning it at all. Sure enough, after Qin Yi finished recording, he glanced at the two of them with a meaningful look, and stuffed the heavenly book to Lu Yuan with a face of forbearance. After enduring for a while, Jiang Wenxiu and Yuanju could no longer bear it. The two of them just felt their brains buzzing, and everywhere they looked, there were a bunch of words and symbols, and the things that were forced to flow in their heads made them want to vomit. Jiang Wenxiu was the first to be unable to bear it. He bent over to the side and vomited for a long time, vomiting a lot of bitter water. Seeing him like this, Yuanju couldn't bear it anymore. Qin Yi was also induced vomit. Everyone, I knew it wasn't that simple. Chapter 371. So Yang Lingkong, Bailey Zhu, Fu Jiao, Lan Shi and others tried one by one. After everyone finished recording, they covered their heads and bent over to vomit. What's more, the later they recorded, the more knowledge was backfired in their brains. Lan Shi, Lu Yuan and others in the south region vomited a few times, suppressed the vomiting in their hearts, covered their heads and rejoiced. Luckily, they tried first, otherwise they would have been like Shi Changxing and Bian Yin, who were the slowest, and vomited for a while, and their eyes turned purple. Seeing the miserable state of several people, Yang Lingkong, Bai Lizu and others' eyelids twitched. They didn't care to watch the fun and waved their hands to go back to rest. At this moment, Jiang Wenxiu and Yuanju had recovered. Their eyes were shining, and they kept clicking their tongues. Everyone says that the top rafters rot first, but I don't think so. Fortunately, I sacrificed myself heroically. I didn't expect to get lucky by accident. Yuanju nodded with a smile, and his eyes wandered over everyone. You kid usually don't do anything, but this time you did a good thing. That's right. I, your young master, foresaw the future and sought benefits and avoided harm. I also gave you such a good opportunity. You got a great bargain for nothing. Jiang Wenxiu boasted. Yuanju rolled his eyes. I praised you a few words, but you are taking advantage of me. The two of them were fighting and bickering with each other, which was very lively. It was only Yang Lingkong, Bailey Zhu, Fu Jiao, and others who were suffering. They were sour. Song Liuhua's son couldn't bear to listen to the two bickering at this moment. His smart eyes were rolling on the young masters. Feng Xiai smiled softly, and stood by her side to watch the fun, occasionally giving her a spiritual fruit. Song Luhua swallowed a soft and sweet little fruit, suddenly took out a blank booklet, and began to write furiously. Feng Xiai leaned over, and saw her write a page. In the eastern region of the Ten Winds continent, a certain house in Tianshu Mansion, on a certain date, the weather was pleasant in the warm season of July, the stars were just right, and the mood was very happy. Yuanju, Jiang Wenxiu, Qin Yi of the southern region. Yang Lingkong of the northern region. Bailey Zhu of the western region. Fu Jiao of the eastern region, and other young masters of each region, for the sake of justice, supplemented the spiritual artifact heavenly book to resist the invasion of strange beasts. They were all like pregnant women, vomiting non-stop, with pale faces, and really suffering. So I recorded it to show his merits. Seeing that his name was not mentioned above, Feng Xiai breathed a sigh of relief and gave some guidance from time to time. Well, it was guidance, but in fact, he took the booklet directly and sketched a starry night vomiting picture with just a few strokes. Jiang Wenxiu put his hands on his hips and laughed wildly, and everyone bent over and vomited wildly. All the clothes, expressions, and clan emblems of various tribes were vividly sketched by him. In the end, he was bored and even made up the vomiting expressions of Jiang Wenxiu, Yunju, the first person to be used and the one with the mildest symptoms. Song Luhua, I always feel that Feng Xiai is worse than me. She used to be a soul painter, and she would use stick figures to represent anyone, and at most write a name on the top of their head. Then she would write a diary and end it. Feng Xi's scene was clearly replayed. She glanced around, and Jiang Wenxiu and Yunju were still clapping their legs and watching others laugh. Bai Lizhu, Fu Jiao, Yang Lingkong and others were still vomiting, and had no time to pay attention to the little movements of the couple. Only Qin Yi, Lan Shi and others had some doubts, and were about to stretch their necks to see. How could Song Luhua give them a chance? She smiled and quickly and satisfiedly collected Feng Xi's new work and her new diary. Qin Yi narrowed his eyes. It seemed wrong. Did he write down some negative information again? Chapter 372. The moon was in the sky. Song Luhua looked at the various words that flashed on the heavenly book from time to time and nodded with satisfaction. It's almost done. This thing will be usable tomorrow. At that time, all you need to do is input spiritual power together to open it. Everyone was tossed around a lot, and many people's brains were still dizzy. Hearing this, they all smiled bitterly, endured the headache and discomfort, and returned to their own residences. Song Luhua yawned and handed the heavenly book to Feng Xiai. It's getting late. Let's go to bed early. Feng Xiai put away the heavenly book, pursed his lips and smiled softly. My wife is right. The couple slept well all night. Qin Yi and others did not sleep well all night, and they were constantly disturbed by all kinds of knowledge even in their dreams. I always dreamed that a lot of knowledge was forced into my head, which was vague and unrememberable, but really made me anxious. The next morning, they all walked out of the room with heavy dark circles under their eyes and a tired face. Fu Jiao rubbed his sore forehead and smiled bitterly. I studied all night in my dream, but I didn't remember anything when I woke up. It seemed like a night of wasted work. Especially the strange symbols and characters. No matter how he speculated, he could not figure it out. I don't know whose head this strange thing is in. The young masters of each clan looked distressed and couldn't help but be curious. The Lan clan members saw Lan Shi pressing his temple from time to time, looking like he had a headache, and asked worriedly, Young clan leader, are you okay? Did you not sleep well yesterday? Lan Shi shook his head slowly. Nothing, don't worry. Seeing this, the Lan clan members stopped asking questions. Jiang Wenxiu could not help but be worried by his clan members. Today was indeed strange. His clan leader had always been as vigorous and high-spirited as a crowing rooster, but he had been listless since this morning. Something was wrong, very wrong. Although his clan leader was unreliable, he still had to be concerned. What happened to you? Did you steal a chicken last night? Jiang Wenxiu, who was half asleep and half awake last night, had been forced into a head full of messy and unremembered knowledge. He was still in a daze, and rolled his eyes at his clan members. Am I such a person? Jiang Shaosan, did Feng Xi's wife's cute cow kick your brain? What's wrong with you? You're so weird today. Weird? Humph. Jiang Wenxiu didn't tell him. Jiang Wenxiu walked around on the deck with his hands behind his back. If you dare to tease him, he will be in trouble later. Feng Xi's wife said yesterday that the new spiritual weapon can be used today. They just completed the things that were already poured into their heads and then used them. In short, Feng Xi's wife's spiritual weapon has never been used in vain, and Jiang Wenxiu is inexplicably looking forward to it. He was looking forward to what would happen after everyone used it. Qin Yi, Bai Lizhu, Yang Lingkong, Bian Yin and others sat cross-legged on the deck with their eyes closed, and from time to time, a trace of text and symbols flashed in their minds. It was very fast, making it hard to catch, and quite a headache. In the end, everyone looked unhappy, but they were quite forbearing. After a few words of concern from the clan members, they let it go. After all, their young master was still reliable. Among this group of people, only Feng Xiai was in the best condition. Song Yuan, Feng Shan and others either closed their eyes to rest or chatted. The flying boat was hundreds of miles away from the city, and scattered cities could be vaguely seen. A few days ago, they helped to clean up, and several cities had been rescued, and many people had joined the team to eliminate the strange beasts. Feng Xiai played with the heavenly book in his hand, and smiled suddenly. Chapter 373. After getting off the flying boat, everyone took out their spirit swords, and prepared to fight like yesterday. Feng Xiai raised his hand, and took out the heavenly book. Feng Shan, take this. Chief, is this the new spirit weapon made by the madam? Feng Xiai nodded, and briefly explained the use of the heavenly book. We will use it to hunt today, and inform the tribes. Yes. Feng Shan was delighted when he heard this, and quickly made arrangements. Although the spirit weapon made by the madam of the clan leader was strange, it was better than using spirit swords alone to fight these high-level beasts with thick skin and flesh. But he was still a little panicked because he didn't know what would happen to this heavenly book spiritual weapon. Sure enough, his premonition was right. This spiritual weapon can be used by tens of thousands of people at the same time. Of course, as everyone knows, driving the spiritual weapon refined by Madame Song will have some sequelae, which will affect the battle situation, so each tribe will retain some manpower every time. The tribesmen of each tribe input their spiritual power into it, and the emerald green heavenly book suspended in the middle flashed with golden light, and slowly grew larger, as big as a small flying boat. In an instant, everyone's brain seemed to be stuffed with something incredible, and words mixed with strange characters drifted with the water, swaying leisurely, seemingly harmless. Everything in front of them seemed to be slowing down, and characters turned into substance, floating in the air, densely packed, sticky and slowly drifting towards the group of strange beasts, drilling into their brains and disappearing completely. Everyone stared at the front nervously. This was the first time they had seen such a spiritual weapon. But after a moment, the eyes of the group of strange beasts suddenly stagnated, and they all stopped, went crazy, howled wildly, twisted, rolled on the ground, and the sharp cries resounded through the mountains and forests. After struggling violently for a while, they lay on the ground, with their big beast eyes open, lying on the ground motionless. Feng Xiai and others saw this, and immediately led people to rush forward. These strange beasts were also motionless, with dull eyes, allowing themselves to be slaughtered, as if they were digesting something. In a moment, the groups of strange beasts that rushed over had been harvested. Cheers came from the crowd, but the situation of Feng Shan, Song Yuan and others was not optimistic at the moment. Is it an illusion? I feel dizzy and want to vomit. It seems that something has entered my head. Song Yuan pursed his lips tightly, forcibly suppressed the nausea, and continued to input spiritual power. Feng Shan nodded slightly. Me too. I feel like vomiting and dizzy. He could vaguely see words flashing in his head. There were too many, one string after another, and he couldn't remember them at all. It made his head hurt, and his chest feel stuffy. Looking at the tribesmen around him, their eyes were straight, their minds were in a trance, and they only knew to pour spiritual power into the heavenly book. When the hunt was over, everyone's heads were filled with knowledge. Yes, it was knowledge. There were all kinds of things, mixed with sporadic strange symbols, like the claw marks left by chicken feet. On the way back to the city, the flying boat was unusually quiet. Because of using the heavenly book spiritual artifact, the people of each tribe stared with their eyes wide open, stupid and dazed, with stars in their eyes. From time to time, they turned their heads to the side and retched a few times. Jiang Wenxiu waved his hand in front of a tribe member, and the tribe member took a long time to react. He rolled his eyes, and continued to immerse himself in his brainstorming. So, Song Luo saw a group of stupid tribe members, including her eldest brother, as expected. Feng Yin saw something wrong at a glance, and curiously came forward to take a look. What's wrong with the brothers? Why are you stupid? He was not too worried. Song Luo put his hands behind his back, walked around the yard several times, checked everyone's condition, and coughed lightly. Nothing, there is too much knowledge in my head, I can't digest it, just sleep. Chapter 374. Too scary, I read all night in my dream last night. When they woke up in the morning, they were distressed. That's right, you said you don't want to learn, but you force it into your head. The key is that I didn't remember the last point. I studied all night for nothing. Feng Shan and others couldn't help but complain everywhere. Song Yuan wiped his face. If he didn't realize that it was his sister's spiritual weapon that was causing trouble, he would have wasted these days. He patted Feng Shan's shoulder and sighed deeply. I cleaned up the monsters during the day and studied in my dreams at night. I made a profit. It has to be my sister. In the long run, brothers will surely be knowledgeable and well-informed. Although he didn't learn anything, he just thought that the messy words and symbols disturbed his sweet dreams. But his sister must be perfect. Song Yuan praised her against his will, and quickly left. Feng Yi and others looked at each other in silence for a long time. When he thought that it would be like this for the next period of time, he couldn't help but look solemn. Accept your fate. Feng Qing rarely spoke, and quickly finished the breakfast in front of him. Feng Yi puffed up his cheeks and said with the vicissitudes of life, I am still young, why do I feel like I have lived several lifetimes? Any martial arts master who used the heavenly book spiritual artifact yesterday looked listless this morning. Feng Xi, who provided a large amount of knowledge, was not surprised by this scene. Jiang Wenxiu was somewhat gloating when he learned about the miserable situation of his clan members. I told you to tease me, and now you have tasted the bitter fruit, hee, you deserve it. He looked like a mean person, causing the Jiang clan members to roll their eyes at him. Jiang Wenxiu had long been accustomed to it. He put his hands behind his back and raised his chin and continued, Since you have such a spiritual weapon to help you, the task of clearing the strange beasts will be handed over to you. You will have to overcome the many difficulties and hardships during this period. After saying that, he left with brisk steps. Jiang clan members, Very good, our young clan leader has always been a bad person. Qin Yi, Lan Shi and others have long been numb to such situations. The fatigue and discomfort caused by the infusion of spiritual power the night before has subsided. The mood is quite bright. He persuaded the tribesmen with a smile. Compared to the many problems such as insufficient kidney energy, walking backwards, and being unable to see the light, the sequelae brought by this heavenly book are minor problems. We have survived such a difficult period of time. If you insist on persisting, you will surely see the moon after the clouds clear. The tribesmen of each tribe, Although it is easy for the young masters to talk, it seems to make sense. In this way, the tribesmen of each tribe were convinced by himself. Only the tribesmen of the Shi clan had the least experience. Although they had learned a little bit before, they were still somewhat shocked by the heavenly book again. Are we all country bumpkins? It's only been half a year since the birth of the spirit weapon, but it's so crazy? Poor me, Shierbio, I can't read a single word. My head was filled with words last night, but I didn't remember any of them this morning. The companion next to him looked bitter. I do know a few words, but I don't remember them either. The two brothers looked at each other and sighed heavily. Hey! Just after finishing breakfast, packing up and getting ready to leave, they heard the chattering of a woman coming from outside the yard. Brother, are you here? I'm here to give you medicine. Nephew, I've brought you something good. The Shi clan members felt their scalps tingling when they heard this. Gritted their teeth, yes. Since asking Mrs. Song for advice, their own weapon refiners and pharmacists have completely let go. They dare to refine any strange elixir or spiritual weapon, which only makes those who use them suffer. Chapter 375. During this period of time, Fo Shan and others were almost driven crazy by the heavenly book and spiritual artifact. They could not sleep well every night, and the endless knowledge in their dreams buried them. They woke up listlessly during the day and continued to use the heavenly book and spiritual artifact to clear the strange beasts. This cycle repeated itself, and some people actually remembered something. Yes, this knowledge was like a monk chanting sutras, and it entered their dreams every night. Even if they had no impression at first, after a long time, it would always leave some traces in everyone's mind. It can't be said to be bad, but it can only be said that everything has two sides. At this time, while continuing to input spiritual power into the heavenly book, Feng Shan suddenly recited a poem. 18-year-old bride and 80-year-old groom, white hair and red makeup. Mandarin ducks sleep together in the quilt. A bunch of pear blossoms overwhelm the crabapple. The martial spirit master, who was close to him, looked at him in surprise when he heard it. Don't think he is illiterate. This poem is not a serious poem. I didn't expect that Feng Shan, who is usually serious, would have such thoughts, which is really amazing. After Feng Shan finished reading, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. At this moment, he wanted to slap himself. What is he talking about? The knowledge that has been forced into his brain in recent days has made his head dizzy, and he unconsciously recited a poem from a certain book that has been forced into his brain. For some reason, he remembered this poem particularly clearly. It kept flashing in his mind, which made him blurt it out. He looked at the Wu Lingshi, who looked up at him in surprise, froze for a moment, and turned his head away pretending to be calm. Too many things have been stuffed into your head recently. You must have hallucinations. I didn't say anything. Feng Shan explained again, with a guilty conscience. Clan member, I believe it. He didn't believe it. It would be fine if he didn't explain it. Once he explained it, it was full of loopholes. Feng Shan obviously found that his explanation was unnecessary. He twitched his mouth and shut up completely. Even so, this poem kept echoing in his mind. He moved his mouth and almost blurted it out again. He coughed lightly and forced it down. He was mechanically inputting spiritual power into the spiritual tool. When his brain was empty and invaded by messy knowledge, he suddenly heard a sentence from the side. "Don't be afraid, girl. When you are 18 next year, I will wear flowers in your hair." He turned his head and saw a plain-looking cousin beside him moving his lips. It was obvious that these words came from his mouth. He didn't know where these words came from, but it was obviously from a book of stories. Foshan felt his teeth ache. "I only remember some indecent things." Thinking of the poem he just blurted out, he lowered his tone guiltily, muttered a sentence in his mouth, and stopped talking. When Song Yuan roared with heroic spirit, "I am the only one in the world," attracting many people's attention, he knew that the situation was not good. For several days, this sentence was gradually engraved in his mind from the shallow to the deep. This sentence really made his blood boil, but he usually only pondered it in his heart, and was quietly excited. Today, he didn't know why he couldn't control his mouth and blurted it out. Being stared at by a group of indescribable eyes, he suddenly felt a little ashamed, and a touch of embarrassed red quietly appeared on his bronze skin. For the first time, he experienced what his little sister often said, "I was so embarrassed that I dug my toes into the ground." How does it feel? He keenly sensed something was wrong. This sentence is easy to remember, and the literal meaning is easy to understand, but if it is used on him, it is completely nonsense. There are many talented people in the four regions. Even the talented predecessors and heroes from ancient times to the present dare not be so arrogant. How could such a serious person like him be so pretentious and speak nonsense? Something is wrong, absolutely wrong. Chapter 376. Of course it's not right. As soon as Song Yuan stopped, more and more people suddenly spoke eloquently, either elegant poems, or the sex of spiritual plants and medicines, or famous quotes from storybooks. This made him more certain of his guess. The brothers were afraid that they had been fooled by this spiritual weapon again. But the spiritual weapons refined by my sister have always been like this, making it hard to guard against. I was relieved after figuring it out. Song Yuan bared his teeth and pricked up his ears to listen to other people's jokes. Feng Xiai was surprised when he first heard it, but when more people shouted randomly and guessed something, he ignored it. Only Jiang Wenqiu kept clicking his tongue. At least half of the words shouted by many of his clansmen were frivolous sentences from the storybooks, and some were those catchy and heroic sentences. Only a very small part came from orthodox classics. Jiang Wenqiu naturally did not read as many books as Feng Xiai and Lan Shi, but as the heir of a large family, he naturally learned a lot. But what he read were all serious books, even though all the knowledge in this spiritual weapon came from the young masters of various domains. Then the question is, if it wasn't him, who else read so many frivolous books? Jiang Wenqiu chuckled, made a random guess, and didn't take it to heart. The tricks that Jiang Wenqiu could think of, others could naturally think of them too. Qin Yi said with a smile, "The heirs of each clan are really crouching tigers and hidden dragons." Lan Shi looked embarrassed. He loved reading very much. He had read all kinds of books, whether they were orthodox books or various types of storybooks. He still remembered some of the words that many clan members had just blurted out. Hearing everyone discussing his abnormality and the source of the knowledge in this heavenly book, he felt a little choked up. Hearing the familiar sentences in his ears, regardless of the type of books they came from, Feng Xiai paused slightly and continued to swing his sword as if nothing had happened. Bailey Zhu blushed slightly. When he thought that the miscellaneous books he read were also recorded and read out by others in public, a touch of embarrassment appeared on his face without any expression. Fu Jiao's face was slightly stiff. He seemed to have heard something familiar. If his guess was correct, the line "the tender green skirt, every inch of it is enchanting" was a line from a book based on the romantic anecdotes of an ancestor of his clan. This book was simply unbearable to read, recording the foolish deeds of the elder half-truthfully. He had heard that this matter caused quite a stir back then, and it was not a glorious thing anyway. The person who wrote this book was also dealt with by his ancestor, who was angry and embarrassed. Most of the people who knew the inside story at that time were silenced. Most of the books that were leaked were also destroyed. After 100 years, it was revealed in this way again. After all, it was a shameful thing in the family. As the young patriarch of the Fu family, Fu Jiao naturally didn't want people to know. Now it seems too late. Fu Jiao sighed. If the elder was still alive, he would vomit blood. He spent a lot of effort to cover it up, but in the end it became known to everyone. Fortunately, no one knew that this matter was related to his Fu family. He couldn't jump out and explain it in a way that was not true. That's it, he's tired. Shi Chansheng, Rongbo, Kong Chichio, Song Zui, Bian Yin, and Shi Mingming all felt ashamed and had no desire to live. The scandals of their respective families were spread everywhere, many of which were old stories that had been buried for a long time. It must be someone who was unscrupulous, who recorded their family's scandals and spread them to foreign lands. Ah! Chapter 377. Huh? After a month of hard work, the second elder and his companions finally approached the inner circle of the central region. The second elder's face turned green, and he exhaled heavily. The long-term tension and fighting made them look ugly. Shihong squatted on the branch of a 1,000-year-old tree, leisurely combing her feathers with her beak. Seeing this, the second elder still couldn't help looking at her with an inquiring look. I don't know where Feng Xi's wife got the bird and beast, but it's so powerful. To be honest, even with the help of the star-absorbing cauldron, they had a very difficult journey. If it weren't for the help of the birds and beasts, they would not have been able to get here. They thought it was just an ordinary, slightly intelligent beast, but they didn't expect its fighting power to be amazing. It could smash the head of a super level 9 large beast with one claw. He and others were initially shocked by the means of this beast, but fortunately, it had no ill will towards them along the way. Otherwise, the second elder had a hunch that even if so many of them were tied together, they would not be its opponent. After observing all the way, the second elder finally realized that this bird and beast was also smart. If they encountered something they could solve by themselves, this bird and beast would not even bother to look at them, let alone help them. When they were really defeated, they would help them to solve the problem casually. Even if someone was injured and unable to move, they could give it some black crystal stones and gray jade beads, and say something nice to it, so that it could help carry a few injured people. Since he already knew its nature, the second elder ignored it. He looked at a place not far away. He clearly felt a bad atmosphere. The second elder didn't know whether to be happy or worried. He pointed to the north and said, "There's something wrong there. Not only is there a mixture of violent spiritual power, but there's also a faint sense of oppression. Moreover, the further north they went, the fewer high-level beasts there were. At this moment, in the dense forest, there was only the sound of the mountain wind, and not even the cry of a bird or beast could be heard." I also noticed what Brother Feng said. They were all smart people, and the dangers in the central region were numerous. The closer they got to the inner circle, the stronger the ominous premonition in their hearts became. Since their cultivation surpassed the 9th level, they haven't felt this kind of fear for a long time. But the original intention of this trip was to find out about the changes in the central region. Perhaps, the answer will be revealed soon. After a careful discussion, everyone decided to go and find out. Somewhere, blood and flesh mixed with grass, wood and soil were sucked into the spiritual power vortex. A group of strong men, with white hair and youthful faces looked extremely ugly. Jiang Lao San is dead, Chen Lao Ba is also gone. We can't hold on for much longer. According to this situation, it is only a matter of time before the spiritual power vortex spreads to the central region. It's not that they didn't think about sending a message to the 4 regions for help, but almost all the super 9th level strongmen in the entire continent gathered here. Even if there were some in the 4 regions, their number would definitely not be many. Not to mention that the 4 regions are far away from here. Even if they all came, it would be of no use. What's more, the 4 regions are now in a difficult situation, and it's good enough to barely protect themselves. An old man, with a few strands of black hair in his temples, coughed up a mouthful of blood, his eyes deep. The continent has this disaster, and we have tried our best. All they can do is to try to buy time, and give the human race in the 4 regions time to prepare. What will happen in the future, after all, can only depend on themselves. And they are old after all. Seeing that the spiritual power vortex is growing again, the strong man, with a strand of black hair in his temple, sighed, and said lightly, "I will go one step at a time." After that, he jumped into the vortex, and suppressed the vortex with his deep spiritual power. Chapter 378. It's just ahead. The second elder and his party followed the strange spiritual power, and rushed forward for dozens of days. Finally, they could feel the unprecedented strong spiritual power fluctuations. The closer they got to the inner circle, the more uneasy they felt. Fortunately, there were no strange beasts blocking the way, and even the high-level spiritual plants were quiet, and did not make trouble. Everyone was a high-level spiritual master. If they rushed forward, they could travel 100 miles a day. At this moment, it was getting dark. According to the usual practice, it was not suitable to rush forward. The second elder and his companions were about to rest on the spot, but they saw the blue bird that looked down on them all the way flying straight over the sky. In just a moment, it disappeared in the hazy night sky. Oh no, Madame Song's pet flew away. Someone looked anxious, and just as he was about to chase it, he lost sight of it. What should we do? There are many dangers in the forest, and it's getting dark. Even if we want to find it, we can't take risks easily. Strange beasts are strange beasts. They don't understand human nature, and at critical moments, they are bound to cause trouble. Many people complained, isn't this just causing trouble for no reason? The second elder frowned, quite dissatisfied, and snorted, I think you are not as smart as it. It can fly, run, and protect itself. If it weren't for you and me, it could come and go freely in the central region. It doesn't even despise you, but you start talking nonsense. If it weren't for the wife of the head of my Feng clan, the bird would have killed you with one claw. It's a waste of its kindness to carry you for a while. You are a heartless person. As soon as these words came out, the complaining old men blushed and their faces turned pale. They naturally knew the power of the blue bird, but they were upset after a long time of running around, so they complained a few words. They were just from small and medium-sized families, which means that when they first came out, they still had the intention to do something big, but after a period of time, and the inexplicable anxiety in their hearts, they had already retreated. But here, regardless of their cultivation and status, they had no advantage. After holding back for a long time, they finally found an opportunity, and couldn't help but complain a few words. Being confronted by the second elder in public, he was angry but dared not say anything. He sat aside and said nothing. The second elder snorted and ignored him. The elders of the 4 major families only glanced at him, and did not want to pay attention. The spiritual power vortex was guarded day and night. After the last time, the strong man, with white hair and black temples, suppressed it with his body, the slightly calm spiritual power vortex showed signs of growing stronger. Everyone was worried. An old man with a gentle face looked at the spiritual power vortex in front of him with his hands behind his backside, and said, I will go tomorrow. I go first. Watching everyone scramble for it, the old man shook his head with satisfaction. It doesn't matter if you go early or late, I go first. The flood season is coming, the water in the Earth's core will surge out, the spiritual power vortex will probably be completely controlled, the Earth veins will be stirred more frequently, and then the 4 regions. Everyone understood what he said before. After a moment of silence, he finally agreed. Yes, there is no difference between going first and going later. The central region is hard to protect. Even if they can escape, they can only survive. It would be better to buy more time for their descendants. Chirp. Just when the atmosphere was low, a clear bird cry suddenly came from the forest behind them. Strange beast? How can there be a bird cry? Everyone was shocked. Since the spiritual power vortex was formed, the strange beasts within 1,000 miles have already moved away, and they have not seen the shadow of strange beasts for several months. While frowning and thinking, they saw a light blue bird flying from the sky with a long tail. Among them, there are many knowledgeable people who rub their eyes in disbelief. Qinghuan, the divine bird Qinghuan? Chapter 379. Shihong is a cunning person. Seeing that the situation ahead is not good, he turned his eyes around a few times, turned around and ran away quickly, leaving only a faint green afterimage. The people below were stunned, and their excited hearts instantly cooled down. Forget it, what kind of divine bird is it? It is just a little more fierce than ordinary birds and beasts. If it hadn't relied on this spiritual power vortex just now, it would have torn you and me to pieces. Yes, even if it is a rare spiritual bird in 1,000 years, it is of no help to us. A group of people sighed, and the spiritual power in their hands did not decrease. Over there, the second elder scolded everyone, looked into the distance, scratched his beard, and frowned. When he saw a light blue shadow appear in the air, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. When it landed gracefully on a tree branch, the second elder laughed and scolded, It's dark, don't run around anymore. Shihong's eyes rolled, turned his back, and ignored him completely. The second elder and others had long been accustomed to its behavior, but they didn't take it seriously and went to rest. The next day, everyone prepared to continue on their journey. Chi-Chi. People. Shihong suddenly spoke, and the second elder and others were startled and instantly understood what it meant. You mean there is someone in front? Shihong ignored them, and flew in one direction. After a brief thought, the second elder and others followed. Shihong led the way in front, and it flew very fast, so tired that the second elder and his group rolled their eyes. When it saw that people were about to catch up, it lingered in place for a while, and when everyone saw that it was about to catch up, it increased its speed again. Everyone was almost exhausted to death, but they couldn't argue with a bird or beast, so they just ran all the way like a kite. They ran for 3 days and nights, and the old bones of the second elder and others were almost broken. Finally, when the sky was slightly bright, they saw the huge spiritual power vortex in front of them. That is, everyone took a breath of cold air. The seemingly peaceful spiritual power vortex concealed a huge and violent spiritual power. This spiritual power vortex seemed to maintain a fragile and delicate balance. Once it lost balance, they had a premonition that it would not only tear them into pieces, but also turn the world upside down. After 3 days of traveling day and night, the people who should have been extremely tired suddenly woke up. They subconsciously took a few steps back and found the person under the huge spiritual power vortex. There really is someone. The second elder and others suddenly remembered the super 9th level strongmen who were hidden in the mainland. Could it be? Seeing these 9th level strongmen sending spiritual power to the spiritual power vortex and setting up a domain, they seemed to be suppressing it. He seemed to understand something, stopped the person who was about to step forward, and stood aside quietly watching. The atmosphere suddenly became quiet. The super 9th level strongmen who had been fighting against the spiritual power vortex for a long time had already vaguely noticed the arrival of outsiders. When he saw that half of them were only at the 8th level, half were at the 9th level, and only a few were at the super 9th level, the joy that had just risen in his heart instantly cooled down. But at the moment, he had no time to split himself up, so he just focused on the things in his hands. When the spiritual power vortex stabilized a little, he collected his spiritual power and walked towards the second elder and others. When he saw the bird and beast with light green feathers on the side, he was secretly shocked. Isn't this the blue phoenix bird they saw a few days ago? It stood very proudly in an open space, walking around calmly, and the people around it kept a distance from it. From this appearance, it seems that they are actually in the same group. Since ancient times, exotic beasts and humans have not been harmonious, and only extremely low-level and weak exotic beasts have become pets of the human race. But this blue phoenix. This group of super 9th level strongmen sighed in their hearts, but seeing outsiders, most of whom may be descendants of their own family, they finally suppressed their worries and went forward to talk. Chapter 380. You guys go back. Without asking, they knew the identities of this group of people. A group of super 9th level strongmen drove them away in a light tone. The current situation is not something you can solve. The cultivation of this group of younger generations is far inferior to theirs. Even if they enter the spiritual power vortex, it will not be of much use. It's just a waste of life. Senior. The second elder and others were in doubt. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration came to their mind. Are you all powerful people who have been hiding from the world? I am a member of the Southern Territory Phone Clan. The second elder looked around among the group of super 9th level warriors. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt several eyes looking at him without any hesitation. Some were scrutinizing, some were satisfied, some were indifferent, but in just a moment, they were quickly withdrawn from him. At the same time, several people in the team of super 9th level warriors stood up. It's been a long time since I saw the younger generation of our family. Not bad. Hearing their personal admission, the second elder was very excited. It's actually the ancestor. The younger generation is polite. At this moment, the second elder and his group finally confirmed the identity of this group of super 9th level masters. Each of them recognized their own elders, and after a round of greetings, the two sides gradually became familiar with each other. Since they were their own descendants, they could not let them die in vain. The super 9th level masters of various tribes drove them away again. Go quickly, it is not advisable to stay here for long. They were not worried about the safety of this group of descendants. Since they could easily get in, they could definitely get out easily at this moment. The situation outside must be bad. Although they didn't know what means they used, they didn't need to worry about getting out. Seeing everyone hesitating, the elders had to urge them again. Go out? You can't do that. We came here to find the root cause of the abnormality in the East region. Seeing the elders here, I think you are here for this matter. Everyone looked up at the suppressed spiritual power vortex. At such an old age, there are few who don't know. Even if the elders didn't say it clearly, the crisis in the East region is most likely related to the spiritual power vortex. Since you are here, please allow us to help the ancestors. The second elder disagreed with the elder's arrangement. As soon as he said this, several people echoed him. Nonsense. Even if you want to help, you need to have good strength. Not to mention you, even we don't know how many people have been killed, and we can't suppress it. The super 9th level strongman frowned and scolded. While we can still suppress it for a while, leave here quickly. These old guys have lived enough, and now they are buried in the spiritual power vortex, which is a worthy death. We can't listen to you. Since we broke into the central region, we have never thought of leaving alive. The second elder and his companions naturally refused to listen, and the two sides argued endlessly, causing the ninth-rank masters to be angry and helpless. Why bother? We know what you mean. It's just that the spiritual power vortex can no longer be suppressed. Once it gets out of control, no one in the 4 regions will be spared. Why not go out first, gather strength, and prepare in advance? It's better than filling your life in vain. The elders' words are not without reason. It's just that they went there in vain, and found the cause of the chaos in the East region. Not only are they helpless, but they can only watch the elders of various tribes who live in seclusion here lose their lives. If they leave this time, many people will be dissatisfied. But if they insist on being deadlocked here, it will be too rigid and will ruin the big thing. The second elder pondered for a while, and decided to give it a try first. Thinking of this, he took out the star-absorbing cauldron. This spiritual weapon is extraordinary. I wonder if it can help a little. Chapter 381. Top-grade spiritual weapon? Interesting, it is actually a top-grade spiritual weapon. When the star-absorbing cauldron showed up, except for the second elder and others, the other super 9th level masters were quite surprised. Everyone present was a person of some knowledge. The appearance of this cauldron was simple, but the inner wall was shining with golden spiritual light. Even at their level, they could feel the surging power inside. It is not that the 10-wind continent has not produced top-grade spiritual weapons over the years, but each one has an owner, mostly spiritual swords, storage rings, flying boats, and other objects. Many have been lost to the world with the passing of time. In the past 100 years, a high-level weapon refiner has refined 2 top-grade spiritual swords. I have never heard of a top-grade spiritual weapon like this tripod. Seniors have good eyesight. This is the star-absorbing cauldron. It was refined by the wife of the clan leader of the Feng clan in the southern region. This trip to the eastern region to eliminate the strange beasts is thanks to it. The second elder said proudly, "This tripod is extraordinary. Can we give it a try?" It's easier said than done. A group of super 9th level strongmen were not optimistic. The spiritual power vortex is of great importance. We can only suppress it slightly by offering ourselves as sacrifices. Although the top-grade spiritual weapon is good, I am afraid it will not be of any use. Why bother to waste another top-grade spiritual weapon? No matter what, please at least give it a try. The second elder and others looked unhappy. They had gone through so much hardship and risked great danger to come here, and they didn't want to leave in such a cowardly way. Moreover, for some reason, perhaps because they had been severely tortured by this tripod during this period, they had an inexplicable confidence in it. The younger generation had already said so much, and even the elders couldn't persuade them anymore. Since you insist on doing so, then give it a try. The second elder handed over the star-absorbing tripod and briefly explained its use, and of course, the disadvantages as well. When they heard that it could absorb spiritual energy, they were still calm. But when they heard that it could absorb people's kidney energy, everyone couldn't help but twitch their lips. I don't know how strange the wife of the patriarch of the Feng family is. The spiritual weapon she refined has such a disadvantage. However, its use is worthy of recognition. Compared with the pros and cons, absorbing the kidney energy of the user is not so unacceptable. Several super 9th level strongmen of the Feng family looked at each other. They lived in seclusion here. Although they had not heard of external affairs for a long time, they were not completely unaware of it. I have heard from the clan members, who have been able to reach the central region in recent years, that the clan is in a bad situation, but I didn't expect that there would be talents now. I heard that the wife of the clan leader of this generation of Feng clan is not very old, and she is very good at refining weapons and medicine. Now she has a top-grade spiritual weapon to prove it. I think the day of prosperity of the family is not far away. I am quite relieved about this. The other clans naturally have their own thoughts. After being amazed and sighing, they are relieved. Now I can't care about so many things. The most important thing is to overcome the difficulties in front of me. When the star-absorbing cauldron was opened, the second elder and the others only felt a chill in their waists, and then the surging spiritual power came from the current spiritual power vortex. The loss of spiritual power and kidney energy was rapid and fierce, but in an instant, everyone present, especially the second elder and others with lower cultivation, were sucked dizzy and sweating. Even though everyone present was a person with high cultivation, this cauldron was not a joke. The second elder and others had adapted to it, and were mentally prepared, but they were also tossed around. The strong man waiting on the side was quick, and pulled the person out quickly. The strong man of the 9th level was also sucked and looked uncomfortable, and was surprised that this thing was so domineering. At their level, They had not felt the feeling of kidney deficiency and exhaustion for many years. Chapter 382. 7 days later, everyone present had a dark complexion and was weak. They were all drained by the spiritual weapon. The effect was obvious. The spiritual vortex that was previously difficult to suppress had now stabilized. If it was to be eliminated, it was not impossible. Everyone was happy, but they couldn't help but sigh. Even the super 9th level masters couldn't stand it. They were surprised and gritted their teeth. I don't know what that kid was thinking. A good spiritual weapon would suck people's kidney energy. It's better to suck blood. The second elder laughed so hard that he staggered and almost fell to the ground. At least let these ancestors try Feng Xi's wife's things, and everyone who sees it will get a share. Now that the star-sucking cauldron has taken effect, the spiritual power vortex has calmed down, like a quiet vortex, rolling up the remaining leaves and grass, and instantly crushing them into powder. This scene is much better than the previous shocking momentum that seemed to swallow everything. Even so, everyone did not dare to take it lightly. After replenishing their spiritual power and physical strength, they continued to fight. The second elder has been gone for more than a month, and I don't know how they are doing. In the evening, the sky was full of clouds. Feng Xi and others had not returned today. Song Luo thought while propping up one arm and casually pulling the silk thread in her hand. The light pink thundercloud turned into a very small dot in the sky. If it weren't for the sparks that flashed from time to time around it, it would be really hard to see. Song Luo tied it with a special, non-conductive spirit rope, like flying a kite, letting it drift in all directions. The shadows of the flying boats of various tribes in the distance gradually became clearer from blurry, and Song Luo shouted to the sky, "Yuan Meili, come back." A pink cloud, beautiful, called Meili. There is nothing wrong with it. Since Yuan Meili was caught, she curled up in a corner of the cage and shut herself up for a long time. She was almost starved to death, and the thunder flowers around her body cracked several times, but they couldn't crack. Song Luo only used thunderstones to tempt her lightly, and she changed her mind and was willing to be the zither in her hand. After being fed with thunderstones several times, a pair of big black eyes and a small mouth hidden in the soft light pink clouds finally appeared, which was indeed a little cute. It can also be used as a kite, adding new fun to her boring daily life. One person and one cloud played like this for a long time, and they had a tacit understanding. When she shouted, Yuan Meili held her fluffy body and floated back slowly. Song Luo untied the spirit rope casually and threw a lightning stone the size of a fingernail. Yuan Meili called softly a few times and swallowed it happily, with lightning flashing all over her body. After being beaten several times, Yuan Meili had begun to have a sense of vision, and she would never get close to the mistress when she was flashing lightning. But she still circled around Song Luo a few times to show her courtesy. Even though she was at a distance, it still caused Song Luo's hair, which was not tied tightly, to stand up. She stroked it as usual and nodded. The naughty child who doesn't know his own killing power needs to be taught by thunder. If he dares to stick to her and discharge electricity, he will learn to be obedient after a few beatings with the big brother's spiritual sword. Look, among the thunderclouds that were captured last time, Wang Meili was the most prominent. It can be used as a kite. The white thundercloud of Lanqi and others is active only when eating thunderstones. At other times, it will discharge electricity with a slight touch. Even after being beaten by Song Yuan's spiritual sword, he still remembers to eat but not to be beaten. He still needs to be shocked. Jiang Wenxiu was the most unconvinced. He could often be seen screaming and jumping around after being electrocuted. When Wang Meili finished her electricity happily, she happily landed on Song Luo's head like a pink hat. It was very light, and weighed nothing on her head, so Song Luo just let it go. She guessed that Feng Xi would come back, so she waved her hand and packed up the 3 pieces of the moping suit. As soon as she finished packing, Feng Xi came in with Song Yuan, Feng Shan and others with a smile on their faces. When Song Yuan saw that she had a pink patch on her head, he excitedly stepped forward to touch it, and Song Luo rolled her eyes in fear. She quickly dodged and hid behind Feng Xi. "If you keep touching it and cause me trouble again, I ask Feng Xi to beat you up." Wang Meili didn't like other people touching it casually. She was implicated by Song Yuan before. Even if her elder brother was electrocuted into a grandson, she was even more unlucky. That electric shock almost pierced through her head and almost electrocuted her to death. She will never forget the feeling of ascending to heaven in her life. She lay in bed for 3 days to recover. She refused to let him touch it again. Feng Xi looked at the brother and sister playing, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. The second elder has been gone for more than a month, and I don't know how he is. I was worried that the flood season was coming, and I was afraid that it would be more troublesome. There was another layer. If I couldn't return home in time this time, I was afraid that I would be stranded in the East region. The situation in the South region was unclear, and I didn't know whether the various tribes could cope with it. Chapter 383. Although I was looking forward to the news of the second elder and others every day, the days still passed quickly. On this day, the 4 regions were clearing the wild land when they heard a familiar crisp cry. It's Shihong. Jiang Wenxiu used a sword to push away the strange beast that blocked the road and looked up into the sky in surprise. The light blue light came from far away, and the outlines of the familiar birds and beasts became clearer. Feng Xi's eyebrows relaxed. Shihong flew over the sky above everyone, hovered for a few circles, glided down, held his head high, walked to Feng Xi's side, chirped a few times, and spit out a letter from his hair. After reading the letter, Feng Xi touched its feathers, took out something and stuffed it into his mouth. You've worked hard, go back first. Shihong squinted his eyes comfortably, swallowed the food in 2 or 3 mouthfuls, flapped his wings, and quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. Jiang Wenxiu and others just came over, and were about to go forward and stroke it, but the bird had already disappeared. Jiang Wenxiu was so envious. It would be great if it was my bird. He stroked it however he wanted. The Jiang family's clansmen held their foreheads. Lanqi, Qin Yi and others smiled. The 3 regions of Northeast, East, and West knew his behavior long ago, so they twitched their lips and ignored him, turning their eyes to Feng Xi. Shihong's appearance indicated that the elders who were going there had news, and it turned out to be true. Feng Xi took out a letter and handed it to everyone to read. The matter in the central region has ended, and we need someone to go and meet the elders. Although everyone was surprised, they still quickly integrated the team and planned to set off. On the other side, the second elder and others handed the written letter to Shihong to take back, and the rest of the group looked at each other in dismay, and finally couldn't help laughing. Having solved the biggest worry in my heart, even if I am in such a mess now, it is worth it. Although the spiritual power vortex was successfully resolved this time, the price paid was not small. In addition to the super 9th level masters of various races, who were damaged in the previous battle, the star-absorbing cauldron also exploded here, turning into thousands of fragments that could not be put together. Even the storage spiritual tools on their bodies exploded in this event, and the clothes and other things they carried with them were all gone. Although there are various spiritual medicines prepared in advance by various races, as well as kidney-tonifying spiritual medicines specially made for the star-absorbing cauldron, the spiritual power vortex in the central region is not vegetarian. This loss will probably take more than decades to make up for. Not to mention, at this moment, they looked haggard, their clothes were tattered, their feet were unsteady when they walked, and they sweated profusely, and their waists ached when they activated their spiritual power. The crisis of the 10-wind continent was successfully resolved. The elders of each tribe wanted to come out with them, to help them clean up the strange beasts and spiritual plants left in each domain, but they were sucked too hard by the star-absorbing cauldron. After some consideration, they could only stay in the central domain to recuperate. The star-absorbing cauldron is an extremely rare top-level spiritual weapon. Now it is completely damaged. The second elder couldn't help sighing, what a pity. Feng Xi and the others came very quickly. Seeing a group of old men in a miserable state, they quickly looked for their elders in the crowd. Seeing that everyone was safe, they put down their worries completely. Even though everyone looked embarrassed at the moment, no one laughed at them. Even Jiang Wenxiu, who was always lively, did not speak nonsense. It had been 3 days since the second elder and others returned from the central region. The cities in the eastern region had recovered a little. As the flood season was approaching, the tribes discussed the return journey. Before leaving, Song Luo looked at the group of descendants who were going astray and fell into deep thought. During this period, she seldom went out and refined a lot of new spiritual tools. During this period, the tribes in the 4 regions found another domain stone, which she used to refine a cauldron shuttle. In this way, the return journey was much simpler, and she was no longer afraid of encountering domain stones on the road. Chapter 384 Extra. Although the spiritual vortex was finally cracked, its impact was not small. There were still many Jisun jades hidden in each domain. Feng Xi and others encountered several waves of strange beasts when they returned from the east domain. Fortunately, Song Luo and the auxiliary spiritual masters of each domain were well prepared, so they survived without any danger. Since the incident in the east domain, each domain believed that the exchanges between the 4 domains were too few. From then on, the 4-domain conference was changed to a 10-year period. The year after the East Domain 4 Domain Exchange Conference, the auxiliary spiritual masters of the 4 domains played a variety of ways to refine instruments and medicines. The patriarch of the Feng family in the South Domain took the lead in refining a teleportation spiritual tool. As a result, the exchanges between the 4 domains were much more convenient than before, and the exchanges between the domains were frequent. Since then, the number of auxiliary spiritualists in the Ten Winds continent has begun to flourish. 1 year later, a super 9th level refiner in the East region refined a special spiritual instrument, the 4 region spirit record, and cooperated with thousands of sub-records to spread the news of each region to all corners of the world. 5 years later, Song Luhua held a sub-record and read the gossips from all over the world with relish. In a place where no one was paying attention, 2 white and tender little kids sneaked into the study of the clan leader's wife. The little girl was called Feng Mian. There were 2 sweet dimples on her chubby face. Her soft hair was tied into 2 buns with light pink spiritual clam beads. She took out a shining storage ring from the box of the Duobao pavilion with familiarity. The chubby little hand waved, and with a bang, a pile of boxes appeared on the ground. The boy with a similar face next to him carefully looked outside and sighed, like a little adult, "Sister, this is not good. Mother will be angry if she knows." "If you don't tell Mother, Mother won't know." Feng Yuan, hurry up and use the sub-book to record it. 5-year-old Feng Mian already knows a lot. She found that her mother sometimes secretly looked at the treasures, and she was very happy every time after watching them, and her father would also laugh. It must be something funny. She also wants to see it. After searching in the box for a long time, she finally found the scrolls of books and paintings that made her curious. 5-year-old Feng Mian was a poor student, and she hadn't even learned all the characters yet. The top student Feng Yuan read 10 lines at a glance, and his face twisted after reading. He saw the dark history of his uncles and his father on it. He didn't expect that the heroic Uncle Jiang was so stupid, and he didn't expect his father to be. Feng Mian couldn't read, and couldn't understand the dark material recorded by her mother in calligraphy and painting. She lost interest after flipping through it a few times. It's not funny at all. Feng Yuan silently took out a book and recorded the scrolls one by one. Song Luhua didn't hear the voices of the 2 children for a long time, and didn't care. The older girl of the 2 little ones was quirky, and took her younger brother everywhere all day long. After all, they were at home, and nothing could happen. The younger one was calm, and had the demeanor of his father. The little bean whose legs were not as long as his father's had the demeanor of a young patriarch. He looked like Feng Ci, but his face was stern, and the family members had to give him some face. Until she saw gossip about herself in the book. One of them was titled My Clan Leader, and 29 Uncles, who are junior clan leaders. The title was particularly eye-catching. The people who didn't know what was going on were very excited when they saw it. Who is so arrogant? Clan Leader and 29 Uncles, who are junior clan leaders, I want to see. Song Luhua thought so too, until she saw the familiar picture album in handwriting, and couldn't help covering her face. No need to think, it must be those 2 kids who did it. In just one afternoon, the black material of the heirs of the 4 regions was flying all over the sky. The person involved knew that his embarrassing story was known to everyone in the face of the clan members, who were trying to hold back their laughter. Jiang Wenqiu scratched his hair and jumped in anger. Qin Yi couldn't laugh anymore. Lu Yuan, Lan Shi and others were in endless silence. As for Bailey Zhu, Yang Lingkong, Shi Chansheng and others who were far away in other domains, they had wooden faces, and were stiff for a moment, but their demeanor remained the same. They discussed through the sub-book, and thought that the next 4-domain exchange conference should be held in the southern domain. 10 years later, the spiritual plant masters have made considerable progress. Golden lotus seeds have been planted in all domains. Each tribe has a special spiritual plant master to take care of them. If necessary, they can also change their gender, but only need strict review. Song Luhua didn't know that someone silently thanked her. Now she has become the common mentor of the 4 domains auxiliary spiritual masters. Occasionally, she puts forward wild ideas and guides others to refine weapons and medicine. Occasionally, she can look at the sub-book and see the tribesmen of the 4 domains come up to complain. She was very happy to see it for a long time. Feng Ci just smiled at her.